like I say, creating more than you can see, doing more than you, so that's a big deal. I think there's a fair number of people in finance that do have a bit of a zero-sum mindset.
I mean, it's all walks of life. I've seen that. One of the reasons Rogan inspires me is he celebrates others a lot. There's not creating a constant competition. Like there's a scarcity of resources. What happens when you celebrate others? You promote others, the ideas of others.
Jackpot is now worth over $500 million. There was no winner in Tuesday night's lottery drawing for the $489 million. So the jackpot will now roll over to the next drawing on Friday night when it will be worth an estimated $522 million. Consumer and business news, Aaron Real, NBC News Radio.
What's with yellow shirts, ambassador vests, instead of armed police? This won't rather work anywhere. It's an incredibly stupid failed idea. And look how many kids have been shot at, stabbed, beat up. John Cobell. What's that?
No.
And on demand anytime on the iHeartRadio
It actually grows that pie. The resources become less scarce. And that applies in a lot of kinds of domains. It applies in academia, and a lot of people are very see some funding for academic research is zero sum, and it is not. If you celebrate each other, if you get everybody to be excited about AI, about physics, about mathematics, I think there'd be more and more funding. I think everybody wins. Yeah, that applies, I think, broadly.
Yeah, exactly.
So last question about love and meaning. What is the role of love in the human condition broadly and more specific to you? How does love, romantic love or otherwise,
Now you're asking really perplexing questions. It's hard to give a. I mean, there are many books, poems, and songs written about what is love and what exactly, what is love? Figure out me.
That's one of the great ones. Yes.
Yeah.
You've earlier quoted Shakespeare, but that's really up there.
Yeah. I mean, love is a many splendid thing.
I mean, there's because we've talked about so many inspiring things, like be useful in the world, so like solve problems, alleviate suffering, but it seems like connection between humans is a source. It's a source of joy, it's a source of meaning, and that's what love is. Friendship, love. I just wonder if you think about that kind of thing when you talk about preserving the light of human consciousness and us becoming a multiplanetary species. I mean, to me, at least, that means, like, if we're just alone and conscious and intelligent, it doesn't mean nearly as much as if we're with others, right? And there's some magic created when we're together. The friendship of it, and I think the highest form of it is love, which I think broadly is much bigger than just sort of romantic, but also, yes, romantic love and family and those kinds of things.
Well, I mean, the reason I guess I care about us becoming a multi-planet species and a space-faring civilization is foundationally, I love humanity. And so I wish to see it prosper and do great things and be happy. And if I did not love humanity, I would not care about these things.
Then when you look at the whole, the human history, all the people who's ever lived, all the people alive now, we're okay. On the whole, we're pretty interesting bunch.
Yeah. All things considered, I've read a lot of history, including the darkest, worst parts of it, and despite all that, I think on balance, I still love humanity.
You joked about it with the 42. What do you think is the meaning of this whole thing? Is there a non-numeric interpretation?
Really, I think what Dr. Savage was saying in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is that the universe is the answer, and what we really need to figure out are what questions to ask about the answer that is the universe.
Yeah.
And that the question is really the hard part. And if you can properly frame the question, then the answer, relatively speaking, is easy. So therefore, if you want to understand what questions to ask about the universe, you want to understand the meaning of life, we need to expand the scope and scale of consciousness so that we're better able to understand the nature of the universe and understand the meaning of life.
And ultimately, the most important part would be to ask the right question.
Yes.
Thereby elevating the role of the interviewer.
Yes, exactly.
As the most important human in the room.
Absolutely. Good questions are, it's hard to come up with good questions. Absolutely. But yeah, it's like that is the foundation of my philosophy, is that I am curious about the nature of the universe, and and obviously I will die. I don't know when I'll die, but I won't live forever. But I would like to know that we're on a path to understanding the nature of the universe and the meaning of life, and what questions to ask about the answer that is the universe. And so if we expand the scope and scale of humanity and consciousness in general, which includes silicon consciousness, then that seems like a fundamentally good thing.
Like I said, I'm deeply grateful that you spend your extremely valuable time with me today, and also that you are giving millions of people hope in this difficult time, this divisive time, in this cynical time. So I hope you do continue doing what you're doing. Thanks so much for talking today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for your excellent question.
Thanks for listening to this conversation with Elon Musk. To support this podcast, please check out our sponsors in the description. And now, let me leave you with some words from Elon Musk himself.
These scientists say they may just be teenage killer whales playing around and following a behavioral trend.
The marine biologist paper, now, this is a reason why I've never turned into a marine biologist, but it says different populations often have distinct dietary specializations maintained by cultural transmission. And these ecotypes typically have a variety of persistent behavioral traditions related to their divergent foraging. So in this case, they may develop unusual and temporary behavioral fads that do not appear to serve any obvious adaptive purpose, which clearly...
The following is a conversation with Elon Musk. He's the CEO of Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, and a co-founder of several other companies. This conversation is part of the Artificial Intelligence Podcast. The series includes leading researchers in academia and industry, including CEOs and CTOs of automotive, robotics, AI, and technology companies. This conversation happened after the release of the paper from our group at MIT on driver functional vigilance during use of Tesla for autopilot. The Tesla team reached out to me offering a podcast conversation with Mr. Musk. I accepted, with full control of questions I could ask and the choice of what is released publicly. I ended up editing out nothing of substance. I've never spoken with Elon before this conversation, publicly or privately. Neither he nor his companies have any influence on my opinion nor on the rigor and integrity of the scientific method that I practice in my position at MIT. Tesla has never financially supported my research, and I've never owned a Tesla vehicle. I've never owned Tesla stock. This podcast is not a scientific paper. It is a conversation. I respect Elon as I do all other leaders and engineers I've spoken with. We agree on some things and disagree on others. My goal is always with these conversations is to understand the way the guest sees the world. One particular point of disagreement in this conversation was the extent to which camera-based driver monitoring will improve outcomes and for how long it will remain relevant for AI-assisted driving. As someone who works on and is fascinated by human-centered artificial intelligence, I believe that if implemented and integrated effectively, camera-based driver monitoring is likely to be a benefit in both the short term and the long term. In contrast, Elon and Tesla's focus is on the improvement of autopilot such that its statistical safety benefits override any concern of human behavior and psychology. Elon and I may not agree on everything, but I deeply respect the engineering and innovation behind the efforts that he leads. My goal here is to catalyze a rigorous, nuanced, and objective discussion in industry and academia on AI-assisted driving, one that ultimately makes for a safer and better world. And now, here's my conversation with Elon Musk. What was the vision, the dream of autopilot when, in the beginning, the big picture system level, when it was first conceived and started being installed in 2014 in the hardware in the cars? What was the vision, the dream?
I would characterize the vision of the dream simply that there were obviously two massive revolutions in the automobile industry. One is the transition to electrification, and then the other is autonomy. And it became obvious to me that in the future, any car that does not have autonomy will be about as useful as a whole. Which is not to say that there's no use, it's just rare and somewhat idiosyncratic as a whole at this point. It's obvious that cars will drive themselves completely. It's just a question of time. And if we do not participate in the autonomy revolution, then our cars would not be useful to people relative to cars that are autonomous. An autonomous car is arguably worth 5 to 10 times more than a car which is not autonomous.
In the long term.
That's what we're doing in the long term, but we'll say at least the next 5 years, perhaps 10 years.
So there are a lot of very interesting design choices with autopilot early on. First is showing on the instrument cluster or in the Model 3 on the center stack display what the combined sensor suite sees. What was the thinking behind that choice? Was there a debate? What was the process?
The whole point with the display is to provide a health check on the vehicle's perception of reality. So the vehicle's taking information from a bunch of sensors, primarily cameras, but also radar, ultrasonics, GPS, and so on. And then that information is then rendered into vector space, and that with a bunch of objects with properties like lane lines and traffic lights and other cars, and then in vector space that is re-rendered onto the display, so you can confirm whether the car knows what's going on or not by looking at the radar.
Right. I think that's an extremely powerful thing for people to get an understanding, to become one with the system and understanding what the system is capable of. Now, have you considered showing more? So if we look at the computer vision, like road segmentation, lane detection, vehicle detection, object detection underlying the system, there is at the edges some uncertainty. Have you considered revealing the parts that the uncertainty in the system, the
probabilities associated with say, image recognition or something like that?
Yeah, so right now it shows like the vehicles in the vicinity, a very clean, crisp image, and people do confirm that there's a car in front of me, and the system sees there's a car in front of me, but to help people build an intuition of what computer vision is by showing some of the uncertainties.
Well, I think it's, in my car I always look at this with the debug view, and there's two debug views. One is augmented vision, where which we've seen where basically we draw boxes and labels around objects that are recognized. And then there's what we call visualizer, which is basically a vector space representation summing up the approachable sensors. That does not show any pictures, but it shows all of the, it basically shows a class view of the world in vector space. But I think this is very difficult for people to, normal people to understand. They don't know what they're looking at.
It's almost an HMI challenge to the current things that are being displayed is optimized for the general public understanding of what the
If that gives you no idea how computer vision works or anything, you can still look at the screen and see if the car knows what's going on. And then if you're a development engineer, or if you have the development build like I do, then you can see the debug information. But those were just three like total generations.
What's your view on how to best distribute the effort? So there's three, I would say, technical aspects of our pilot that are really important. Just the underlying algorithms, like the network architecture. There's the data that's trained on, and then there's the hardware development. There may be others, but so look, algorithm, data, hardware. You only have so much money, only have so much time. What do you think is the most important thing to allocate resources to? Do you see this pretty evenly distributed between those three?
We would like to get fast amounts of data because all our cars have 8 external facing cameras and radar and 12 ultrasonic sensors, GPS obviously, and IMU. And so we basically have a fleet that has we've got about 400,000 cars on the road that have that level of data. I think we keep quite close track of it actually. Yes. Yeah. So we're approaching 500,000 cars on the road that have the full sensor suite. So this is I'm not sure how many other cars on the road have this sensor suite, but I'd be surprised if it's more than 5,000, which means that we have 99% of all the data.
So there's this huge inflow of data.
Absolutely, massive inflow of data. And then it's taken us about 3 years, but now we've finally built up a self-driving computer, which can process an order of magnitude as much as the NVIDIA system that we currently have in the cars. And it's really just to use it, you unplug the NVIDIA computer and plug the Tesla computer in. And that's it. And it's in fact, we're still exploring the boundaries and its capabilities. We're able to run the cameras at full frame rate, full resolution, not even crop the images. And it's still quite happy, even on one of the systems. The full self-driving computer is really two computers, two systems on a chip that are fully redundant. So you could put both through basically any part of that system and it still works.
The redundancy, are they perfect copies of each other? Or
yeah.
Also purely for redundancy as opposed to an arguing machine kind of architecture where they're both making decisions. This is purely for redundancy.
If you ever if you ever see a twin-engine aircraft, commercial aircraft, the system will operate best if both systems are operating. but it's capable of operating safely on one. So, but as is right now, we can just run. We haven't even hit the edge of performance, so there's no need to actually distribute functionality across both SoCs. We can actually just run a full duplicate on each one.
You haven't really explored or hit the limit of the
They're not yet the limit.
So the magic of deep learning is that it gets better with data. You said there's a huge inflow of data, but
Yeah.
the thing about driving, the really valuable data to learn from is the edge cases. So how do you, I've heard you talk somewhere about autopilot disengagement being an important moment of time.
Yeah.
To use. Is there other edge cases, or perhaps can you speak to those edge cases? What aspects of them might be valuable, or if you have other ideas how to discover more and more and more edge cases in driving?
Well, there's a lot of things that I learned. There's certainly edge cases where say somebody's on autopilot and they take over, and then okay, that's a trigger that goes to a system that says, okay, do they take over for convenience, or do they take over because the autopilot wasn't working properly? So there's also, like, let's say we're trying to figure out what is the optimal spline for traversing an intersection. Then the ones where there are no interventions and we can have are the right ones. So you then say, okay, when it looks like this, keep following. And then you get the optimal spline for a complex, navigating a complex intersection.
That's for this. So there's kind of the common case when you're trying to capture a huge amount of samples of a particular intersection, how when things went right, and then there's the edge case where, as you said, not for convenience, but something.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody took manual control from autopilot. And it really, like, the way you look at this is view all input is error. If the user had to do input, if there's something, all input is error.
It's a powerful line to think of it that way, because it may very well be error. But if you want to exit the highway, or if you want to, it's a navigation decision that all autopilot is not currently designed to do, then the driver takes over. How do you know that?
That's going to change with navigating autopilot, which we just released, and without still confirmed. The navigation, like lane change based, like asserting control in order to do a lane change or exit a freeway or doing a highway interchange. The vast majority of that will go away with the release of the
Yeah, so that I don't think people quite understand how big of a step that is.
Yeah, they don't.
So
if you drive the car, then you do.
So you still have to keep your hands on the steering wheel currently when it does the automatic lane change. So there's these big leaps to the development of autopilot through its history, and what stands out to you as the big leaps? I would say this one, navigating autopilot without having to confirm, is a huge leap.
It is a huge leap. And it also automatically overtakes both cars. So it's both navigation and seeking the fastest lane. So it'll overtake the slow cars and exit the freeway and take highway interchanges. And then we have traffic light recognition, which is introduced initially as a warning. I mean, on the development version that I'm driving, the car fully stops and goes at traffic lights.
So those are the steps. That's right. You just mentioned something, sort of inkling of a step towards full autonomy. What would you say are the biggest technological roadblocks to full self-driving?
Actually, I think we just, the full self-driving computer that we just, the Tesla, what we call the FSD computer, that's now in production. So if you order any Model S or X or any Model 3 that has the full self-driving pack, because you'll get the FSD computer. That that's important to have enough base computation, then refining the neural net and the control software, which all of that can just be provided as an over-the-air update. The thing that's really profound. And what I'll be emphasizing at the investor day that we're having focused on autonomy is that the cars currently being produced, or the hardware currently being produced, is capable of full self-driving.
But capable is an interesting word. Because
The hardware is, and as we refine this software, the capabilities will increase dramatically, and then the reliability will increase dramatically, versus regulatory approval. So essentially, buying a car today is an investment in the future. You're essentially buying. You're buying. I think the most profound thing is that if you buy a Tesla today, I believe you are buying an appreciating asset, not a depreciating asset.
So that's a really important statement there, because if hardware is capable enough, that's the hard thing to upgrade.
Yes,
Usually.
exactly.
So then the rest is a software problem.
Yeah. Software is no marginal cost, really.
But what's your intuition on the software side? How hard are the remaining steps to get it to where, the experience, not just the safety, but the whole experience is something that people would enjoy?
I think people enjoy it very much so on highways. It's a total game changer for quality of life. For using Tesla autopilot on the highways. So it's really just extending that functionality to city streets, adding in the traffic light recognition, navigating complex intersections, and then being able to navigate complicated parking lots so the car can exit a parking space and come find you, even if it's in a complete maze of a parking lot. And then you can just drop you off and find a parking spot by itself.
Yeah, in terms of enjoyability and something that people would actually find a lot of use from, the parking lot is a really, it's rich of annoyance when you have to do it manually. So there's a lot of benefit we gain from automation there. So let me start injecting the human into this discussion a little bit. So let's talk about full autonomy. If you look at the current level 4 vehicles being tested on the road, like Waymo and so on, they're only technically autonomous. They're really level 2 systems with just a different design philosophy, because there's always a safety driver in almost all cases in the monitoring system. Do you see Tesla's full self-driving as still for a time to come, requiring supervision of the human being? So its capabilities are powerful enough to drive, but nevertheless requires a human to still be supervising, just like a safety driver is in other fully autonomous vehicles.
I think it'll require detecting hands on wheel for at least 6 months or something like that from here. Really, it's a question of, like, from a regulatory standpoint, how much safer than a person does autopilot need to be for it to be okay to not monitor the car? And this is a debate that one can have. And then if you need a large sample, a large amount of data, so that you can prove with high confidence, statistically speaking, that the car is dramatically safer than a person, and that adding in person monitoring does not materially affect the safety. So it might need to be like 200 or 300% safer than a person.
And how do you prove that?
Incidents per mile.
Incidents per mile. Crashes and fatalities. So,
Yeah, I mean, fatality would be a factor, but there are just not enough fatalities to be statistically significant at scale. But there are enough crashes. There are far more crashes than there are fatalities. So you can assess what is the probability of crash. Then there's another step, which is probability of injury, and probability of permanent injury, and probability of death. And all of those need to be much better than a person by at least perhaps 200%.
and you think there's the ability to have a healthy discourse with the regulatory bodies on this topic?
I mean, there's no question that regulators pay a disproportionate amount of attention to that which generates press. This is just an objective fact. And thus it generates a lot of press. So, in the United States, there's I think almost 40,000 automotive deaths per year. But if there are 4 in Tesla, they'll probably receive 1,000 times more press than anyone else.
So the psychology of that is actually fascinating. I don't think we'll have enough time to talk about that, but I have to talk to you about the human side of things. So myself and our team at MIT recently released a paper on functional vigilance of drivers while using autopilot. This is work we've been doing since autopilot was first released publicly over 3 years ago, collecting video of driver faces and driver body. So I saw that you tweeted a quote from the abstract, so I can at least guess that you've glanced at it.
Yeah, right.
Can I talk you through what we found?
Sure.
Okay. So it appears that in the data that we've collected, that drivers are maintaining functional vigilance, such that we're looking at 18,000 disengagements from autopilot, 18,900, and annotating were they able to take over control in a timely manner. So they were there, present, looking at the road to take over control. Okay. So this goes against what many would predict from the body of literature on vigilance. Now the question is, do you think these results hold across the broader population? So ours is just a small subset. Do you think one of the criticisms is that there's a small minority of drivers that may be highly responsible, where the vigilance decrement would increase with autopilot use?
I think this is all really going to be swept. I mean, the systems are improving so much, so fast, that this is going to be a moot point very soon. Where vigilance is, like, if something's many times safer than a person, then adding a person does the effect on safety is limited. And in fact, it could be negative.
That's really interesting. So the fact that a human may, some percent of the population may exhibit a vigilance decrement will not affect the overall statistics numbers. Safety.
No, in fact, I think it will become very, very quickly, maybe even towards the end of this year, but I'd be shocked if it's not next year at the latest, that having the person having a human intervene will decrease safety. Decrease. It's like, imagine if you're in an elevator. Now, it used to be that there were elevator operators, and you couldn't go in an elevator by yourself and work the lever to move between floors. And now nobody wants an elevator operator, because the automated elevator that stops the floors is much safer than the elevator operator. And in fact, it would be quite dangerous to have someone with a lever that can raise the elevator between floors.
So that's a really powerful statement and a really interesting one. But I also have to ask, from a user experience and from a safety perspective, one of the passions for me algorithmically is camera-based detection of just sensing the human, but detecting what the driver's looking at, cognitive load, body pose. On the computer vision side, that's a fascinating problem. But and there's many in industry who believe you have to have camera-based driver monitoring. Do you think there could be benefit gained from driver monitoring?
If you have a system that's out or below human level reliability, then driver monitoring makes sense. But if your system is dramatically better, more reliable than human, then driver monitoring is not as much. And like I said, you just like you wouldn't want someone you want someone in the elevator. If you're in an elevator, do you really want someone with a big lever, or some random person operating an elevator between floors? I wouldn't trust that. I would rather have a button.
Okay, you're optimistic about the pace of improvement of the system. That from what you've seen with a full self-driving car, computer.
The rate of improvement is exponential.
So one of the other very interesting design choices early on that connects to this is the operational design domain of autopilot. So where autopilot is able to be turned on. So contrast another vehicle system that we're studying is the Cadillac Super Cruise system. That's, in terms of ODD, very constrained to particular kinds of highways, well mapped, tested. It's much narrower than the ODD of Tesla vehicles. There's
Like ADD.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good one. What was a design decision in that different philosophy of thinking, where there's pros and cons? What we see with a wide ODD is Tesla drivers are able to explore more the limitations of the system early on, and they understand, together with the instrument cluster display, they start to understand what are the capabilities. So that's a benefit. The con is you're letting drivers use it basically anywhere.
So anyway, that should detect lanes with confidence.
Was there philosophy, design decisions that were challenging that were being made there? Or from the very beginning, was that done on purpose with intent?
Well, I mean, I think frankly, it's pretty crazy letting people drive a 2-ton death machine manually. That's crazy. Like in the future, if people were like, I can't believe anyone was just allowed to drive one of these 2-ton death machines, and they just drive wherever they wanted. Just like elevators, you just like move the elevator with the lever wherever you want it, and stop it halfway between floors if you want. It's pretty crazy. So it's going to seem like a mad thing in the future that people will drive in cars.
Look, I have a bunch of questions about the human psychology, about behavior and so on, that would become because you have faith in the AI system. Not faith, but both on the hardware side and the deep learning approach of learning from data will make it just far safer than humans.
Yeah, exactly.
Recently, there are a few hackers who tricked autopilot to act in unexpected ways with adversarial examples. So we all know that neural network systems are very sensitive to minor disturbances to these adversarial examples on input. Do you think it's possible to defend against something like this? Putting the street. So,
yeah.
Can you elaborate on the confidence behind that answer?
Well, a neural net is just like basically a bunch of matrix map. But you have to be like a very sophisticated, somebody who really understands neural nets and like basically reverse engineer how the matrix is being built, and then create a little thing that just exactly causes the matrix map to be slightly off. But it's very easy to just block that by having basically negative recognition. It's like if the system sees something that looks like a matrix hack, exclude it. Because it was such an easy thing to do.
So learn both on the the validator and the invalidator. So basically learn on the adversarial examples to be able to exclude them.
Yeah, you basically want to both know what is a car and what is definitely not a car. And you train for this is a car and this is definitely not a car. Those are two different things. People have no idea how to neural nets really. They probably think neural nets involves like fishing net.
So, as you know, so taking a step beyond just Tesla and autopilot, current deep learning approaches still seem in some ways to be far from general intelligence systems. Do you think the current approaches will take us to general intelligence, or do totally new ideas need to be invented?
I think we're missing a few key ideas for general intelligence, artificial general intelligence. But it's going to be fun. That's very quickly, and then we'll need to figure out what shall we do if we even have that choice. But it's amazing how people can't differentiate between, say, the narrow AI that allows a car to figure out what a lane line is and navigate streets versus general intelligence. Like these are just very different things. Like your toaster and your computer are both machines, but one's much more sophisticated than another.
You're confident with Tesla you can create the world's best toaster.
The world's best toaster, yes. Supposedly. The world's best self-driving. Yes. To me, right now, this seems game, set, match. I don't want to be complacent or confident, but that's what it appears. That is just literally how it appears right now. I could be wrong, but it appears to be the case that Tesla is vastly ahead of everyone.
Do you think we'll ever create an AI system that we can love and loves us back in a deep, meaningful way, like in the movie Her?
I think AI will be capable of convincing you to fall in love with it very well.
And that's different than us humans.
We're start getting into a metaphysical question of, like, do emotions and thoughts exist in a different realm than the physical? And maybe they do, maybe they don't, I don't know. But from a physics standpoint, I tend to think of things, like physics was my main sort of training. And from a physics standpoint, essentially, if it loves you in a way that you can't tell whether it's real or not, it is real.
It's a physics view of love.
Yeah. If you can't prove that it does not, if there's no test that you can apply that would allow you to tell the difference, then there is no difference. Right?
And it's similar to seeing our world as simulation. There may not be a test to tell the difference between what the real world is, a simulation, and therefore, from a physics perspective, it might as well be the same thing.
Yeah. There may be ways to test whether it's simulation. There might be. I'm not saying wrong. But you could certainly imagine that a simulation could correct that. Once an entity in the simulation found a way to detect the simulation, it could either restart, pause the simulation, start a new simulation, or do one of many other things that then corrects for that error.
So when maybe you or somebody else creates an AGI system and you get to ask her one question, what would that question be?
What's
That's outside consideration. Elon, thank you so much for talking today. It was a pleasure.
All right.
Thank you.
With Southern California's only airport traffic reports on Jimmy Harmon. Between the lines or beyond illegal and ethical limits under the surface. Dangerous or disruptive to the existing status quo. Host Ben Golan, Matt Frederick, and Noel Brown introduce you to the world of stuff they don't want you to know. Officially entered the age of highwire. History is riddled with unexplained events. Somebody messing with us now. It's time for some answers. Take us to the edge of that cool looking grass. Listen to stuff they don't want you to know on America's #1 podcast network, iHeart.
I think compute is going to be the currency of the future. I think it will be maybe the most precious commodity in the world. I expect that by the end of this decade, and possibly somewhat sooner than that, we will have quite capable systems that we look at and say, wow, that's really remarkable. The road to AGI should be a giant power struggle. I expect that to be the case.
Whoever builds AGI first gets a lot of power. Do you trust yourself with that much power? The following is a conversation with Sam Altman, the second time in the podcast. He is the CEO of OpenAI, the company behind GPT-4, ChatGPT, Sora, and perhaps one day, the very company that will build AGI. This is the Lex Friedman podcast. To support it, please check out our sponsors in the description. And now, dear friends, here's Sam Altman. Take me through the OpenAI board saga that started on Thursday, November 16th, maybe Friday, November 17th for you.
That was definitely the most painful professional experience of my life. And chaotic and shameful and upsetting and a bunch of other negative things. There were great things about it too, and I wish it had not been in such an adrenaline rush that I wasn't able to stop and appreciate them at the time. But I came across this old tweet of mine, or this tweet of mine from that time period, which was like, it was like, you know, kind of going to your own eulogy, watching people say all these great things about you, and just like unbelievable support from people I love and care about. That was really nice. That whole weekend, I kind of like felt, with one big exception, I felt like a great deal of love and very light. Even though it felt like I have no idea what's happening and what's going to happen here, and this feels really bad. And there were definitely times I thought it was going to be like one of the worst things to have happen for AI safety. Well, I also think I'm happy that it happened relatively early. I thought at some point between when OpenAI started and when we created AGI, there was going to be something crazy and explosive that happened. But there may be more crazy and explosive things still to happen. It still, I think, helped us build up some resilience and be ready for more challenges in the future.
But the thing you had a sense that you would experience is some kind of power struggle.
The road to AGI should be a giant power struggle. Like the world should. Not should. I expect that to be the case.
And so you have to go through that, like you said, iterate as often as possible, figuring out how to have a board structure, how to have organization, how to have the kind of people that you're working with, how to communicate all that in order to de-escalate the power struggle as much as possible.
Yeah.
Pacify it.
But at this point, it feels, you know, like something that was in the past that was really unpleasant and really difficult and painful, but we're back to work and things are so busy and so intense that I don't spend a lot of time thinking about it. There was a time after, there was like this fugue state for kind of like the month after, maybe 45 days after, that was, I was just sort of like drifting through the days. I was so out of it. I was feeling so down.
Is that a personal psychological level?
Yeah, really painful. And hard to like have to keep running OpenAI in the middle of that. I just wanted to like crawl into a cave and kind of recover for a while. But, you know, now it's like we're just back to working on the mission.
Well, it's still useful to go back there and reflect on board structures, on power dynamics, on how companies are run, the tension between research and product development and money and all this kind of stuff, so that you, who have a very high potential of building AGI, would do so in a slightly more organized, less dramatic way in the future. So there's value there to go, both the personal psychological aspects of you as a leader and also just the board structure, all this kind of messy stuff.
Definitely learned a lot about structure and incentives and what we need out of a board. And I think that it is valuable that this happened now in some sense. I think this is probably not like the last high stress moment of OpenAI, but it was quite a high stress moment when the company very nearly got destroyed. And we think a lot about many of the other things we've got to get right for AGI, but thinking about how to build a resilient org and how to build a structure that will stand up to like a lot of pressure in the world, which I expect more and more as we get closer. I think that's super important.
Do you have a sense of how deep and rigorous the deliberation process by the board was? Like, can you shine some light on just human dynamics involved in situations like this? Was it just a few conversations and all of a sudden it escalates and why don't we fire Sam kind of thing?
I think the board members are well-meaning people on the whole. And I believe that in stressful situations where people feel time pressure or whatever, people understandably make suboptimal decisions. And I think one of the challenges for OpenAI will be we're going to have a board and a team that are good at operating under pressure.
Do you think the board had too much power?
I think boards are supposed to have a lot of power. But one of the things that we did see is in most corporate structures, boards are usually answerable to shareholders. There's sometimes people have like super voting shares or whatever. In this case, I think one of the things with our structure that we maybe should have thought about more than we did is that the board of a nonprofit has, unless you put other rules in place, like quite a lot of power. They don't really answer to anyone but themselves. There's ways in which that's good, but what we'd really like is for the board of OpenAI to like answer to the world as a whole as much as that's a practical thing.
So there's a new board announced.
Yeah.
There's, I guess, a new smaller board at first, and now there's a new final board.
Not a final board yet. We've added some.
Okay. What is fixed in the new one that was perhaps broken in the previous one?
The old board sort of got smaller over the course of about a year. It was 9 and then went down to 6. And then we couldn't agree on who to add. And the board also, I think, didn't have a lot of experienced board members. And a lot of the new board members at OpenAI have just had more experience as board members. I think that'll help.
It's been criticized, some of the people that are added to the board, I heard a lot of people criticizing the addition of Larry Summers, for example. What's the process of selecting the board like? What's involved in that?
So Brett and Larry were kind of decided in the heat of the moment over this like very tense weekend, and that weekend was a real roller coaster. It was like a lot of ups and downs. And we were trying to agree on new board members that both sort of the executive team here and the old board members felt would be reasonable. Larry was actually one of their suggestions, the old board members. Brett, I think, I had even previous to that weekend suggested, but he was busy and didn't want to do it, and then we really needed help and would. We talked about a lot of other people too, but that was, I felt like if I was going to come back, I needed new board members. I didn't think I could work with the old board again in the same configuration. We then decided, and I'm grateful that Adam would stay. But we wanted to get to, we considered various configurations, decided we wanted to get to board 3. And had to find 2 new board members over the course of sort of a short period of time. So those were decided honestly without, that's like, you kind of do that on the battlefield. You don't have time to design a rigorous process then. For new board members, since the new board members will have going forward, we have some criteria that we think are important for the board to have, different expertise that we want the board to have. Unlike hiring an executive, we need them to do one role while the board needs to do a whole role of kind of governance and thoughtfulness well. And so one thing that Brett says, which I really like, is that we want to hire our board members in slates, not as individuals one at a time. And thinking about a group of people that will bring profit expertise running companies, sort of good legal and governance expertise. That's kind of what we try to optimize for.
Does technical side be important for the individual board members?
Not for every board member, but for certainly some meetings. That's part of what the board needs to do.
So, the interesting thing that people probably don't understand about it, I certainly don't, is like all the details of running the business. When they think about the board, given the drama, they think about you, they think about like, if you reach AGI or you reach some of these incredibly impactful products, and you build them and deploy them, what's the conversation with the board like? And they kind of think, all right, what's the right squad to have in that kind of situation to deliberate?
Look, I think you definitely need some technical experts there, and then you need some people who are like, how can we deploy this in a way that will help people in the world the most, and people who have a very different perspective. I think a mistake that you or I might make is to think that only the technical understand and it matters. And that's definitely part of the conversation with that board to have. A lot more about how that's going to just like impact society and people's lives that you really want represented in there too.
And you're just kind of, are you looking at the track record of people, or you're just having conversations?
Track record is a big deal. You of course have a lot of conversations, but there's some roles where I kind of totally ignore track record and just look at slopes, kind of ignore why I understand.
Thank you for making it mathematical for the audience.
For a board member, like I do care much more about why I understand. Like I think there is something deep to say about track record there, and experience is sometimes very hard to replace.
Do you try to fit a polynomial function or exponential into the track record?
That's not that, and analogy doesn't carry that far.
All right. You mentioned some of the low points that weekend. What were some of the low points psychologically for you? Did you consider going to the Amazon jungle and just taking ayahuasca and disappearing forever? Or
I mean, there's so many, like, it was a very bad period of time. There were great high points too. Like, my phone was just like sort of nonstop blowing up with nice messages from people I work with every day, people I hadn't talked to in a decade. I didn't get to like appreciate that as much as I should have because it's just like in the middle of this firefight, but that was really nice. But on the whole, it was like a very painful weekend, and also just like it was like a battle fought in public to a surprising degree, and that was extremely exhausting to me, much more than I expected. I think fights are generally exhausting, but this one really was. You know, what did this Friday afternoon, I really couldn't get much in the way of answers, but I also was just like, well, Org gets to do this, and so I'm gonna think for a little bit about what I want to do, but I'll try to find the blessing in disguise here. And I was like, well, my current job at OpenAI is, or it was, like to like run a decently sized company at this point. And the thing I always liked the most was just getting to like work with the researchers. And I was like, yeah, I can just go do like a very focused AGI research effort. And I got excited about that. It didn't even occur to me at the time to like possibly that this was all going to get undone. This was like Friday afternoon.
so you've accepted the death
Very quickly. Like within, I went through like a little period of confusion and rage, but very quickly. And by Friday night, I was like talking to people about what was gonna be next, and I was excited about that. I think it was Friday night evening for the first time that I heard from the exec team here, which is like, hey, we're gonna like fight this, and if you think whatever. And then I went to bed just still being like, okay, I'm excited, onward.
Were you able to sleep?
Not a lot. It was one of the weird things was this like period of four and a half days where I just didn't sleep much, didn't eat much, and still kind of had like a surprising amount of energy. It was like a weird thing about adrenaline and wartime.
You kind of accepted the death of this baby.
And I was excited for the new thing. I was just like, okay, this was crazy, but whatever.
That was a very good coping mechanism.
And then Saturday morning, two of the board members called and said, hey, we need to destabilize things. We don't destroy a lot of value here. Can we talk about you coming back? And I immediately didn't want to do that, but I thought a little more, and I was like, well, I really care about the people here, the partners, shareholders, like I love this company. And so I thought about it, and I was like, well, okay, then like here's the stuff I would need. And then the most painful time of all was over the course of that weekend. I kept thinking and being told, and we all kept, not just me, like the whole team here kept thinking, well, we were trying to like keep OpenAI stabilized while the whole world was trying to break it apart, people trying to recruit, whatever. We kept being told like, all right, we're almost done, we just need like a little bit more time. And it was this like very confusing state. And then Sunday evening, when again, like every few hours, I expected that we were going to be done and we were going to like figure out a way for me to return and things to go back to how they were. The board then appointed a new interim CEO. And then I was like, that feels really bad. That was the low point of the whole thing. I'll tell you something. It felt very painful, but I felt a lot of love that whole weekend. It was not, other than that one moment Sunday night, I would not characterize my emotions as anger or hate. But I really just I felt a lot of love from people, towards people. It was like painful, but it was like the dominant emotion of the weekend was love, not hate.
You've spoken highly of Mira Moradi, that she helped especially, as you put in a tweet, in the quiet moments when it counts. Perhaps we could take a bit of a tangent. What do you admire about Mira?
Well, she did a great job during that weekend in a lot of chaos, but people often see leaders in the moment, in like the crisis moments, good or bad. But the thing I really value in leaders is how people act on a morning Tuesday at 9:46 in the morning. and in just sort of the normal drudgery of the day-to-day. How someone shows up in a meeting, the quality of the decisions they make. And that was what I meant about the quiet moments.
Meaning like most of the work is done on a day by day, in meeting by meeting, just be present and make great decisions.
Yeah, I mean, look, what you wanted to spend the last 20 minutes about, and I understand, is like this one very traumatic weekend.
Yeah.
But that's not really what Open AI is about. Open AI is really about the other 7 years.
Well, yeah, human civilization is not about the invasion of the Soviet Union by Nazi Germany, but still that's something to focus on.
Very, very
It gives us an insight into human nature, the extremes of human nature, and perhaps some of the damage and some of the triumph from some human civilization can happen in those moments. So it's like illustrative. Let me ask you about Ilya. Is he being held hostage in a secret nuclear facility?
No.
What about a regular secret facility?
No.
What about a nuclear non-secret facility?
Neither of them. Not that either.
I mean, it's becoming a meme at some point. You've known Ilya for a long time. He was obviously in part of this drama and with the board and all that kind of stuff. What's your relationship with him? No.
I love Ilya. I have tremendous respect for Ilya. Yeah, I don't know anything I can like say about his plans right now. That's a question for him. But I really hope we work together for, certainly the rest of my career. He's a little bit younger than me. Maybe he works a little bit longer.
There's a meme that he saw something. Like he maybe saw AGI and that gave him a lot of worry internally. What did Ilya see?
He has not seen AGI. I don't know if he's seen AGI. We don't build AGI. I do think one of the many things that I really love about Ilya is he takes AGI and the safety concerns, broadly speaking, including things like the impact this is going to have on society, very seriously. And as we continue to make significant progress, Ilya is one of the people that I've spent the most time over the last couple of years talking about what this is going to mean, what we need to do to ensure we get it right, to ensure that we succeed at the mission. So Ilya did not see AGI, but Ilya is a credit to humanity in terms of how much he thinks and worries about making sure we get this right.
I've had a bunch of conversations with him in the past. I think when he talks about technology, he's always like doing this long-term thinking type of thing. So he's not thinking about what this is going to be in a year. He's thinking about it in 10 years.
Yeah.
Just thinking from first principles, like, okay, if this scales, what are the fundamentals here? Where's this going? And so that's a foundation for them thinking about like all the other safety concerns and all that kind of stuff, which makes him a really fascinating human to talk with. Do you have any idea why he's been kind of quiet? Is it he's just doing some soul searching?
Again, I don't want to like speak for Ilya. I think that you should ask him that. He's definitely a thoughtful guy. I kind of think of Ilya as like always on a soul search in a really good way.
Yeah. Also, he appreciates the power of silence. Also, I'm told he can be a silly guy, which I've never seen that side.
It's very sweet when that happens.
I've never witnessed a silly Ilya, but I look forward to that as well.
I was at a dinner party with him recently, and he was playing with a puppy, and he was like in a very silly mood, very endearing, and I was thinking like, oh man, this is like And that's the side of the failure that the world sees in that.
So just to wrap up this whole saga, are you feeling good about the board structure,
Yes.
about all of this, and like where it's moving?
We're great about the new board. In terms of the structure of OpenAI, one of the board's tasks is to look at that and see where we can make it more robust. We wanted to get some new board members in place first. But we clearly learned a lesson about structure throughout this process. I don't have, I think, super deep things to say. It was a crazy, very painful experience. I think it was like a perfect storm of weirdness. It was like a preview for me of what's going to happen as the stakes get higher and higher, and the need that we have like robust governance structures and processes and people. I am kind of happy it happened when it did, but it was a shocking and painful thing to go through.
Did it make you be more hesitant in trusting people?
Yes.
Just on a personal level?
I think I'm an extremely trusting person. I always had a life philosophy, like don't worry about all of the paranoia, don't worry about the edge cases. You get a little bit screwed in exchange for getting to live with your guard down. And this was so shocking to me. I was so caught off guard that it has definitely changed. And I really don't like this. It's definitely changed how I think about just like default trust of people and planning for the bad scenarios.
You gotta be careful with that. Are you worried about becoming a little too cynical?
I'm not worried about becoming too cynical. I think I'm like the extreme opposite of cynical person, but I'm worried about just becoming like less of a default trusting person.
I'm actually not sure which mode is best to operate in for a person who's developing AGI. Trusting or non-trusting. It's an interesting journey you're on. But in terms of structure, see, I'm more interested on the human level. Like, how do you surround yourself with humans that are building cool shit, but also are making wise decisions? Because the more money you start making, the more power the thing has, the weirder people get.
I think you could like make all kinds of comments about the board members and the level of trust I should have had there or how I should have done things differently. But in terms of the team here, I think you'd have to like give me a very good grade on that one. And I have just like enormous gratitude and trust and respect for the people that I work with every day. And I think being surrounded with people like that is really important.
Our mutual friend Elon sued OpenAI. What he is the essence of what he's criticizing. To what degree does he have a point? To what degree is he wrong?
I don't know what it's really about. We started off just thinking we were going to be a research lab and having no idea about how this technology was going to go. It's hard to, because it was only 7 or 8 years ago, it's hard to go back and remember what it was like then. But before language models were a big deal, just before we had any idea about an API or selling access to a chatbot, before we had any idea we were going to productize it all. So we're just like going to try to do research and we don't really know what we're going to do with that. I think with like many new, fundamentally new things, you start humbling through the depths and you make some assumptions, most of which turn out to be wrong. And then it became clear that we were going to need to do different things and also have huge amounts more capital. And so we said, okay, well, the structure doesn't quite work for that. How do we patch the structure? And then you patch it again, and you end up with something that does look kind of eyebrow raising, to say the least. But we got here gradually with, I think, reasonable decisions at each point along the way. And doesn't mean I wouldn't do it totally differently if we could go back now with an oracle, but you don't get the oracle at the time. But anyway, in terms of what Elon's real motivations here are, I don't know.
To the degree you remember, what was the response that OpenAI gave in the blog post? Can you summarize it?
Oh, we just said like, Elon said this sort of things. Here's our characterization, or here's the sort of, not our characterization, here's like the characterization of how this went down. We tried to like not make it emotional and just sort of say like, here's the history.
I do think there's a degree of mischaracterization from Elon here about one of the points you just made, which is the degree of uncertainty you have at the time. You guys are a bunch of like a small group of researchers crazily talking about AGI when everybody's laughing at that thought.
Wasn't that long ago Elon was crazily talking about launching rockets?
Yeah.
When people were laughing at that thought. So I think he'd have more empathy for this.
I mean, I do think that there's personal stuff here, that there was a split, that OpenAI and a lot of amazing people here chose to part ways with Elon. So there's a person.
Elon chose to part ways.
Can you describe that exactly? The choosing to part ways?
He thought OpenAI was going to fail. He wanted total control to sort of turn it around. We wanted to keep going in the direction that now is become OpenAI. He also wanted Tesla to be able to build an AGI effort. At various times he wanted to make OpenAI into a for-profit company that he could have control of or have it merge with Tesla. We don't want to do that, and he decided to leave, which that's fine.
So you're saying, and that's one of the things that the blog post says, is that he wanted OpenAI to be basically acquired by Tesla.
Yeah.
In the same way that, or maybe something similar, or maybe something more dramatic than the partnership with Microsoft.
My memory of the proposal was just like, yeah, like get acquired by Tesla and have Tesla have full control over it. I'm pretty sure that's what it was.
So what is the word open in OpenAI? Yeah, I mean, to Elon at the time, Ilya has talked about this in the email exchanges and all this kind of stuff. What does it mean to you at the time? What does it mean to you now?
I would definitely pick a different, speaking of going down the Oracle, I'd pick a different name. One of the things that I think OpenAI is doing that is the most important of everything that we're doing is putting powerful technology in the hands of people for free as a public good. Not when, we don't run ads on our free version. We don't monetize it in other ways. We just say it's part of our mission. We want to put increasingly powerful tools in the hands of people for free and get them to use them. And I think that kind of open is really important to our mission. I think if you give people great tools and teach them to use them, or teach them to figure it out, and let them go build an incredible future for each other with that, that's a big deal. So if we can keep putting like free or low cost, or free and low cost, powerful AI tools out in the world, I think that's a huge deal for how we fulfill the mission. Open source or not, yeah, I think we should open source some stuff and not other stuff. It does become this like religious battle line where nuance is hard to have, but I think nuance is the right answer.
So he said, changing name to Close AI, and I'll drop the lawsuit. I mean, is it going to become this battleground in the land of memes?
I think that speaks to the seriousness with which Elon means the lawsuit. And yeah, I mean, that's like an astonishing thing to say, I think.
Well, I don't think the lawsuit, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the lawsuit is legally serious. It's more to make a point about the future of AGI and the company that's currently leading the way. So,
look, I mean, Grok had not open sourced anything until people pointed out it was a little bit hypocritical, and then he announced that Grok will open source things this week. I don't think open source versus not is what this is really about.
Well, we'll talk about open source or not. I do think maybe criticizing the competition is great. Just talking a little shit, that's great. Hey. But friendly competition versus I personally hate lawsuits.
Yeah, look, I think this whole thing is like unbecoming of a builder, and I respect Elon as one of the great builders of our time. And I know he knows what it's like to have like haters attack him, and it makes me extra sad he's doing it to us.
Yeah, he's one of the greatest builders of all time, potentially the greatest builder of all time.
It makes me sad. And I think it makes a lot of people sad. Like, there's a lot of people who really looked up to him for a long time, and said this. I said, in some interview or something that I missed the old Elon, and the number of messages I got being like that exactly encapsulates how I feel.
I think he should just win. He should just make Grok beat GPT, and then GPT beats Grok, and it's just a competition. And it's beautiful for everybody. But on the question of open source, do you think there's a lot of companies playing with this idea? It's quite interesting. I would say Meta, surprisingly, has led the way on this. Or at least took the first step in the game of chess of really open sourcing the model. Of course, it's not the state-of-the-art model, but open sourcing model. And Google is flirting with the idea of open sourcing a smaller version. What are the pros and cons of open sourcing? Have you played around with this idea?
Yeah, I think there is definitely a place for open source models, particularly smaller models that people can run locally. I think there's huge demand for. I think there will be some open source models, there will be some closed source models. It won't be unlike other ecosystems in that way.
I listened to All In podcast talking about this lawsuit and all that kind of stuff, and they were more concerned about the precedent of going from nonprofit to this cap for profit. What precedent this sets for other startups?
I would heavily discourage any startup that was thinking about starting as a nonprofit and adding a for-profit arm later. I'd heavily discourage them from doing that. I don't think we'll set a precedent here.
Yeah. So most startups should go just
for sure. And again, if we knew what was going to happen, we would have done that too.
Well, in theory, if you dance beautifully here, you can. There's tax incentives or whatever.
I don't think that's how most people think about these things.
So it's not possible to save a lot of money for a startup if you do it this way.
No, I think there's laws that would make that pretty difficult.
Where do you hope this goes with Elon? With this tension, this dance, where do you hope this? If we go 1, 2, 3 years from now, you're in a relationship with him on a personal level too, friendship, friendly competition, just all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I really respect Elon. And I hope that years in the future we have an amicable relationship.
Yeah, I hope you guys have an amicable relationship this month. And just compete and win and explore these ideas together. I do suppose there's competition for talent or whatever, but it should be friendly competition. Just build cool shit. And Elon's pretty good at building cool shit, but so are you. So speaking of cool shit, so there's a million questions I could ask. First of all, it's amazing. It truly is amazing. On a product level, but also just on a philosophical level. So let me just, technical / philosophical, ask, what do you think it understands about the world more or less than GPT-4, for example? The whole model, when you train on these patches versus language tokens.
I think all of these models understand something more about the world model than most of us give them credit for. And because they're also very clear things they just don't understand, so don't get it right. It's easy to look at the weaknesses, see through the veil, and say, this is all fake. But it's not all fake, it's just some of it works and some of it doesn't work. I remember when I started first watching story videos and I would see a person walk in front of something for a few seconds and occlude it and then walk walk away and the same thing was still there. I was like, oh, this is pretty good. But there's examples where like the underlying physics looks so well represented over how to steps in a sequence. It's like, oh, this is like quite impressive. But like fundamentally, these models are just getting better, and that will keep happening. If you look at the trajectory from Belly 1 to 2 to 3 to Sora, there are a lot of people that have dumped on each person, saying it can't do this, it can't do that, and like look at it now.
Yeah, well, the thing you just mentioned is kind of with occlusions. It's basically modeling the physics of three-dimensional physics of the world sufficiently well to capture those kinds of things.
Well,
maybe you could tell me, in order to deal with occlusions, what does the world model need to do?
yeah, so what I would say is it's doing something to deal with occlusions really well. What I represent that it has like a great underlying 3D model of the world. It's a little bit more of a stretch.
And can we get there? Do we just these kinds of two-dimensional training data approaches?
It looks like this approach is going to go surprisingly far. I don't want to speculate too much about what limits it will surmount and which it won't, but
what are some interesting limitations of the system that you see? I mean, there's been some fun ones you've posted.
there's all kinds of fun. I mean, like, cats sprouting an extra limb at random points in a video. Pick what you want, but there's still a lot of problems, a lot of weaknesses.
Do you think it's a fundamental flaw of the approach, or is it just, bigger model or better like technical details or better data, more data is going to solve the cat's problem?
I would say yes to both. Like, I think there is something about the approach which just seems to feel different from how we think and learn and whatever. And then also, I think it'll get better with scale.
Like I mentioned, LLMs have tokens, text tokens, and Sora has visual patches. So it converts all visual data, diverse kinds of visual data, videos, and images into patches. Is the training to the degree you can say fully self-supervised, or is there some manual labeling going on? Like, what's the involvement of humans in all this?
I mean, without saying anything specific about the Sora approach, we use lots of human data in our work.
But not internet scale data. So lots of humans. Lots is a complicated word.
I think lots is a fair word in this case.
Yeah, it doesn't, because to me, lots, like, listen, I'm an introvert, and when I hang out with like 3 people, that's a lot of people. Yeah, 4 people, that's a lot. But I suppose you mean more than
3 people work on labeling the data for these models, yeah.
But fundamentally, there's a lot of self-supervised learning, because what you mentioned in the technical report is internet scale data. It's really beautiful. It's like poetry. So it's a lot of data that's not human label. It's like it's self-supervised in that way.
Yeah.
And then the question is how much data is there on the internet that could be used in this, that is conducive to this kind of self-supervised way. If only we knew the details of the self-supervised. Have you considered opening it up a little more detailed?
We have. So you mean for Sora specifically?
Sora specifically, because it's so interesting that, like, can the same magic of LLMs now start moving towards visual data? And what does that take to do that?
I mean, it looks to me like, yeah, we have more work to do.
What are the dangers? Why are you concerned about releasing the system? What are some possible dangers of this?
I mean, frankly speaking, one thing we have to do before releasing the system is just like get it to work at a level of efficiency that will deliver the scale people are going to want from this. So that I don't want to downplay that. And there's still a ton of work to do there. But you can imagine like issues with deepfakes, misinformation. Like, we try to be a thoughtful company about what we put out into the world, and it doesn't take much thought to think about the ways this can go badly.
There's a lot of tough questions here. You're dealing in a very tough space. Do you think training AI should be or is fair use under copyright law?
I think the question behind that question is, do people who create valuable data deserve to have some way that they get compensated for use of it? And that, I think the answer is yes. I don't know yet what the answer is. People have proposed a lot of different things. We've tried some different models. But, if I'm like an artist, for example, A, I would like to be able to opt out of people generating art in my style. And B, if they do generate art in my style, I'd like to have some economic model associated with that.
Yeah, it's that transition from CDs to Napster to Spotify. Let's figure out some kind of
The
model.
model changes, but people have got to get paid.
There should be some kind of incentive, if we zoom out even more, for humans to keep doing cool shit.
That's everything I worry about. Humans are going to do cool shit, and society's going to find some way to reward it. That seems pretty hardwired. We want to create, we want to be useful, we want to achieve status in whatever way. That's not going anywhere, I don't think.
But the reward might not be monetary, financial. It might be like fame and celebration of other cool.
Maybe financial in some other way. Again, I don't think we've seen the last evolution of how the economic system came out.
Yeah, but artists and creators are worried. When they see Sora, they're like, holy shit.
Sure, artists were also super worried when photography came out.
Yeah.
And then photography became a new art form, and people made a lot of money taking pictures. And I think things like that will keep happening. People will use the new tools in new ways.
If you just look on YouTube or something like this, how much of that would be using Sora like AI generated content, do you think, in the next 5 years?
People talk about how many jobs they're going to do in 5 years. And the framework that people have is what percentage of current jobs are just going to be totally replaced by some AI doing the job. The way I think about it is not what percent of jobs AI will do, but what percent of tasks will AI do and over what time horizon. So if you think of all of the 5-second tasks in the economy, 5-minute tasks, 5-hour tasks, maybe even the 5-day tasks, how many of those can AI do? And I think that's a way more interesting, impactful, important question than how many jobs AI can do, because it is a tool that will work in increasing levels of sophistication and over long amount of time horizons for more and more tasks, and let people operate at a higher level of abstraction. So maybe people are way more efficient at the job they do, and it's some point that's not just a quantitative change, but it's a qualitative one too about the kinds of problems you can keep in your head. I think that for videos on YouTube, it'll be the same. Many videos, maybe most of them, will use AI tools in the production, but they'll still be fundamentally driven by a person thinking about it, putting it together, doing parts of it. Sort of directing and running it.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I mean, it's scary, but it's interesting to think about. I tend to believe that humans like to watch other humans, or other humans.
Humans really care about other humans a lot.
Yeah. If there's a cooler thing that better than the human, humans care about that for 2 days and then they go back to humans.
That seems very deeply low.
Right? It's the whole chess thing. Oh, this is but no. Let's everybody keep playing chess. And let's ignore the elephant in the room that humans are really bad at chess relative to AI.
They still run races and cars are much faster. I mean, there's a lot of examples.
Yeah. And maybe it'll just be tooling in the Adobe suite type of way where you can just make videos much easier and all that kind of stuff. Listen, I hate being in front of the camera. If I can figure out a way to not be in front of the camera, I would love it. Unfortunately, it'll take a while. Like that, generating faces, it's getting there. But generating faces in video format is tricky when it's specific people versus generic people. Let me ask you about GPT-4. There's so many questions. First of all, also amazing. looking back, it'll probably be this kind of historic pivotal moment with 3, 5, and 4, ChatGPT.
Maybe 5 will be the pivotal one. Hard to say that looking forward.
You never know. That's the annoying thing about the future. It's hard to predict. But for me, looking back, GPT-4, ChatGPT is pretty damn impressive, like historically impressive. So allow me to ask, what's been the most impressive capabilities of GPT-4 to you and GPT-4 Turbo?
I think it kind of sucks.
Typical human also. Got used to an awesome thing.
No, I think it is an amazing thing. But relative to where we need to get to and where I believe we will get to, at the time of like GPT-3, people were like, "Oh, this is amazing. This is this like marvel of technology," and it was. But now we have GPT-4, GPT-3, and like that's unimaginably horrible. I expect that the delta between 5 and 4 will be the same as between 4 and 3, and I think it is our job to live a few years in the future and remember that the tools we have now are going to kind of suck looking backwards at them, and that's how we make sure the future is better.
What are the most glorious ways that GPT-4 sucks? Meaning,
What are the best things it can do?
what are the best things it can do and the limits of those best things that allow you to say it sucks, therefore gives you inspiration and hope for the future?
One thing I've been using it for more recently is sort of like a brainstorming partner.
Yeah.
And
For that.
there's a glimmer of something amazing in there. I don't think it gets, when people talk about it, what it does, they're like, oh, it helps me code more productively, it helps me write more faster and better, it helps me, translate from this language to another, all these like amazing things, but there's something about the like kind of creative brainstorming partner. I need to come up with a name for this thing. I need to like think about this problem in a different way. I'm not sure what to do here. That I think like gives a glimpse of something I hope to see more of. One of the other things that you can see like a very small glimpse of is when I can help on longer horizon tasks. Break down something into multiple steps. Maybe like execute some of those steps, search the internet, write code, whatever, put that together. When that works, which is not very often, it's like very magical.
The iterative back and forth is human. It works a lot for me. What do you mean?
When iterative back and forth, you can get more often. When it can go do like a 10-step problem on its own.
Oh,
It doesn't work for that too often. Sometimes.
add multiple layers of abstraction, or do you mean just sequential?
Both, like, to break it down and then do things with different layers of abstraction put together. Look, I don't want to like downplay the accomplishment of GPT-4, but I don't want to overstate it either. And I think this point that we are on an exponential curve, we'll look back relatively soon at GPT-4, like we look back at GPT-3 now.
That said, when ChatGPT was a transition to where people like started to believe it, there was an uptick of believing. Not internally at OpenAI perhaps, there's believers here, but
And in that sense, I do think it'll be a moment where a lot of the world went from not believing to believing. That was more about the ChatGPT interface than and by the interface and product, I also mean the post-training of the model and how we tune it to be helpful to you and how to use it than the underlying model itself.
how much of those two, each of those things are important? The underlying model and RLHF or something of that nature that tunes it to be more compelling to the human, more effective and productive for the human.
I mean, they're both super important, but the RLHF, the post-training step, the little wrapper of things that, from a compute perspective, little wrapper of things that we do on top of the base model, even though it's a huge amount of work. That's really important, to say nothing of the product that we build around it. In some sense, like, we did have to do two things. We had to invent the underlying technology, and then we had to figure out how to make it into a product people would love. which is not just about the actual product work itself, but this whole other step of how you align it and make it useful.
And how you make the scale work where a lot of people can use it at the same time, all that kind of stuff.
And that. But, that was like a known difficult thing. Like we knew we were gonna have to scale it up. We had to go do two things that had like never been done before. That were both like, I'd say quite significant achievements. And then a lot of things like scaling it up that other companies had to do before.
How does the context window of going from 8K to 120 8K tokens compare from GPT-4 to GPT-4 Turbo?
People like long. Most people don't need all of them. Wait, 128 most of the time, although, if we dream into the distant future, we'll have like way distant future, we'll have like text length of several billion. You will feed in all of your information, all of your history over time, and it'll just get to know you better and that'll be great. For now, the way people use these models, they're not doing that. And, people sometimes post in a paper or, a significant fraction of the code or whatever. But most usage of the models is not using the long context most of the time.
I like it. This is your I have a dream speech. One day you'll be judged by the full context of your character or of your full lifetime. That's interesting. So that's part of the expansion that you're hoping for, is greater and greater context.
I saw this internet clip once. I'm going to get the numbers wrong, but it was like it's talking about the amount of memory on some early computer. 64, maybe 640 or something like that. And most of it was used for the screen buffer. And he just couldn't, he seemed genuine. Couldn't imagine that the world would eventually need gigabytes of memory in a computer, terabytes of memory in a computer. And you always do. Or you always do just need to follow the exponential of technology, and we will find out how to use that technology. So I can't really imagine what it's like right now for context lengths to go out to the billions someday. And they might not literally go there, but effectively it'll feel like that. But I know we'll use it and really not want to go back once we have it.
Yeah, even saying billions 10 years from now might seem dumb because it'd be like trillions upon trillions.
Sure.
That'd be some kind of breakthrough that will effectively feel like infinite context. But even 120, I have to be honest, I haven't pushed it to that degree. Maybe putting in entire books or parts of books and papers. What are some interesting use cases of GPT-4 that you've seen?
The thing that I find most interesting is not any particular use case that we can talk about those, but it's people who kind of this is mostly younger people, but people who use it as their default start for any kind of knowledge work task.
Yeah.
And it's the fact that it can do a lot of things reasonably well. You can use GPT-V, you can use it to help you write code, you can use it to help you do search, you can use it to edit a paper. The most interesting to me is the people who just use it as the start of their workflow.
I do as well for many things. I use it as a reading partner for reading books. It helps me think through ideas, especially when the books are classics, so it's really well written about. It actually I find it often to be significantly better than even Wikipedia and the world cover topics. It's somehow more balanced and more nuanced. Maybe it's me, but it inspires me to think deeper than a Wikipedia article does. I'm not exactly sure what that is. You mentioned this collaboration. I'm not sure where the magic is. If it's in here or if it's in there, or if it's somewhere in between. I'm not sure. But one of the things that concerns me for knowledge tasks when I start with GPT is I'll usually have to do fact checking after, check that it didn't come up with fake stuff. How do you figure that out? That GPT can come up with fake stuff that sounds really convincing. So how do you ground it in truth?
That's obviously an area of intense interest for us. I think it's going to get a lot better with upcoming versions, but we'll have to work on it, and we're not going to have it like all solved this year.
Well, the scary thing is, like, as it gets better, you start not doing the fact checking more and more, right?
I'm of two minds about that. I think people are like much more sophisticated users of technology than we often give them credit for. And people seem to really understand that GPT, any of these models hallucinate some of the time, and if it's mission critical, you gotta check it.
Except journalists don't seem to understand that. I've seen journalists half-assedly just using GPT-4.
Of the long list of things I'd like to dunk on journalists for, this is not my top criticism of them.
Well, I think the bigger criticism is perhaps the pressures and the incentives of being a journalist is that you have to work really quickly, and this is a shortcut. I would love our society to incentivize like a journalistic efforts that take days and weeks and rewards great in-depth journalism. Also journalism that represents stuff in a balanced way where it's like celebrates people while criticizing them, even though the criticism is the thing that gets clicks. And making shit up also gets clicks. And headlines that mischaracterize completely. I'm sure you have a lot of people dunking on all that drama probably got a lot of clicks.
Probably did.
And that's a bigger problem about human civilization. I'd love to see solved is when we celebrate it a bit more. You've given ChatGPT the ability to have memories. You've been playing with that about previous conversations. And also the ability to turn off memory. I wish I could do that sometimes. Just turn on or off, depending. I guess sometimes alcohol can do that, but not optimally, I suppose. What have you seen through that, like playing around with that idea of remembering conversations?
We're very early in our explorations here, but I think what people want, or at least what I want myself, is a model that gets to know me and gets more useful to me over time. This is an early exploration. I think there's like a lot of other things to do, but that's where we'd like to head. You'd like to use a model, and over the course of your life, or use a system, many models, and over the course of your life, it gets better and better.
Yeah, how hard is that problem? Because right now it's more like remembering little factoids and preferences and so on. What about remembering, like, don't you want GPT to remember all the shit you went through in November and all the drama, and then you can, because right now you're clearly blocking it out a little bit.
It's not just that I want it to remember that. I want it to integrate the lessons of that and remind me in the future what to do differently or what to watch out for. And, we all gain from experience over the course of our lives, varying degrees. And I'd like my AI agent to gain with that experience too. So if we go back and let ourselves imagine that trillions and trillions of context lengths, I can put every conversation I've ever had with anybody in my life in there. I can have all of my emails input out, like all of my input output in the context window every time I ask a question. That'd be pretty cool, I think.
Yeah, I think that would be very cool. People sometimes will hear that and be concerned about privacy. What do you think about that aspect of it? The more effective the AI becomes at really integrating all the experiences and all the data that happened to you, give you advice.
I think the right answer there is just user choice. Anything I want strictly from the record from my AI agent, I'll be able to take out. If I don't want to remember anything, I want that too. You and I may have different opinions about where on that privacy utility trade-off for our own AI you want to be, which is totally fine. But I think the answer is just like really easy user choice.
But there should be some high level of transparency from a company about the user choice. Sometimes companies in the past have been kind of actually shady about it's kind of presumed that we're collecting all your data, we're using it for a good reason, for advertising and so on. But there's not a transparency in the details of that.
That's totally true. You mentioned it earlier that I'm blocking out November stuff.
I'm just teasing you.
Well, I mean, I think it
exhausted by already.
was
People don't like either candidate.
a very traumatic thing, and it did immobilize me for a long period of time. It was definitely the hardest,
What's going to happen over the next 6 months?
like the hardest work that I've had to do was just like keep working that period. Because I had to like, you know, try to come back in and put the pieces together while I was just like in sort of shock and pain, and you know, nobody really cares about that. I mean, I think gave me a pass and I was not working at a normal level. But there was a period where I was just like, it was really hard to have to do both. But I kind of woke up one morning and I was like, this was a horrible thing to happen. I mean, I think I could just feel like a victim forever. Or I can say this is like the most important work I'll ever touch in my life, and I need to get back to it. And it doesn't mean that I've repressed it, because sometimes I like wake up in the middle of the night thinking about it, but I do feel like an obligation to keep moving forward.
Well, that's beautifully said. But there could be some lingering stuff in there. Like what I would be concerned about is that trust thing that you mentioned, and being paranoid about people, as opposed to just trusting everybody or most people, like using your gut. It's a tricky dance, for sure. I mean, because I've seen in my part-time explorations, I've been diving deeply into the Zelensky administration and the Putin administration and the dynamics there in wartime in a very highly stressful environment. And what happens is distrust, and you isolate yourself both. And you start to not see the world clearly. And that's a concern, that's a human concern. You seem to have taken it in stride and kind of learned the good lessons and felt the love and let the love energize you, which is great, but it still can linger in there. There's just some questions I would love to ask for your intuition about what's GPT able to do and not. So it's allocating approximately the same amount of compute for each token it generates. Is there room there in this kind of approach to slower thinking, sequential thinking?
I think there will be a new paradigm for that kind of thinking.
Will it be similar, like architecturally, as what we're seeing now with LLMs? Is it a layer on top of the LLMs?
I can imagine many ways to implement that. I think that's less important than the question you were getting at, which is, do we need a way to do a slower kind of thinking where the answer doesn't have to get like, you know, it's like I guess like spiritually you could say that you want an AI to be able to think harder about a harder problem, but and answer more quickly about an easier problem. And I think that will be important.
Is that like a human thought that we're just having, you should be able to think hard? Is that the wrong intuition?
I suspect that's a reasonable intuition.
Interesting. So it's not possible once the GPT gets like GPT-7, we'll just be instantaneously be able to see, you know, here's the proof from our steel.
It seems to me like you want to be able to allocate more compute to harder problems. Like, it seems to me that a system knowing, if you ask a system like that, proof from us last theorem versus what's today's date, unless it already knew and had memorized the answer to the proof, assuming it's got to go figure that out, seems like that'll take more compute.
But can it look like a basically LLM talking to itself, that kind of thing?
Maybe. I mean, there's a lot of things that you could imagine working. What the right or the best way to do that will be, we don't know.
This does make me think of the lore behind Q-Star. What's this mysterious Q-Star project? Is it also in the same nuclear facility?
There is no nuclear facility.
That's my personal nuclear facility always says.
I would love to have a secret nuclear facility. There isn't one.
All right.
Maybe someday.
Someday? All right. One can dream.
OpenAI is not a good company at keeping secrets. It would be nice, you know, we're like been plagued by a lot of leaks, and it would be nice if we were able to have something like that.
Can you speak to what Q star is?
We are not ready to talk about that.
See, but an answer like that means there's something to talk about. It's very mysterious. Huh?
I mean, we work on all kinds of research. We have said for a while that we think better reasoning in these systems is an important direction that we'd like to pursue. We haven't cracked the code yet. We're very interested in it.
Is there going to be moments, Q star or otherwise, where there's going to be leaks similar to ChatGPT, where you're like,
That's a good question. It's interesting. To me, it all feels pretty continuous.
right, this is kind of a theme that you're saying, is there's a gradual, you're basically gradually going up an exponential slope, but from an outsider perspective, from me just watching it, it does feel like there's leaps. But to you, there isn't.
I do wonder if we should have, so, part of the reason that we deploy the way we do is that we think, we call it iterative deployment. We, rather than go build in secret until we got all the way to GPT-5, we decided to talk about GPT-1, 2, 3, and 4. And part of the reason there is I think AI and surprise don't go together. And also the world, people, institutions, whatever you want to call it, need time to adapt and think about these things. And I think one of the best things that OpenAI has done is this strategy, and we get the world to pay attention to the progress, to take AGI seriously, to think about what systems and structures and governance we want in place before we're like under the gun to make a rush decision. I think that's really good. But the fact that people like you and others say you still feel like there are these leaps makes me think that maybe we should be doing our releasing even more iteratively. I don't know what that would mean. I don't have an answer ready to go. But our goal is not to have shock updates to the world. The opposite.
Yeah, for sure. More iterative would be amazing. I think that's just beautiful for everybody.
But that's what we're trying to do. That's our stated strategy. And I think we're somehow missing the mark. So maybe we should think about, releasing GPT-5 in a different way or something like that.
4.71, 4.72. But people tend to like to celebrate. People celebrate birthdays. I don't know if you know humans, but they kind of have these milestones.
I do know some humans. People do like milestones. I totally get that. I think we like milestones too. It's fun to, say declare victory on this one and go start the next thing. But yeah, I feel like we're somehow getting this a little bit wrong.
So when is GPT-5 coming out? Again?
I don't know. That's an honest answer.
That's the honest answer. Is it linked twice if it's this year? Here.
We will release an amazing new model this year. I don't know what we'll call it.
So that goes to the question of what's the way we release this thing?
We'll release over in the coming months many different things. I think that'd be very cool. I think before we talk about a GPT-5 model called that or not called that or a little bit worse, a little bit better than what you'd expect from the GPT-5. And then we have a lot of other important things to release first.
I don't know what to expect from GPT-5. You're making me nervous. So excited. What are some of the biggest challenges and bottlenecks to overcome for whatever it ends up being called? Call it GPT-5. Just interesting to ask. Is it on the compute side? Is it on the technical side?
Always all of these. I was what's the one big unlock? Is it a bigger computer? Is it a new secret? Is it something else? It's all of these things together. The thing that OpenAI I think does really well this is actually an original Ilya quote that I'm going to butcher, but it's something like, we multiply 200 medium-sized things together into one giant thing.
So there's this distributed constant innovation happening.
Yeah.
So even on the technical side, like
Especially on the technical side.
like even like detailed approaches, like the detailed aspects of every. How does that work with different disparate teams and so on? Like how do the medium-sized things become one whole giant transformer? How does this?
There's a few people who have to like think about putting the whole thing together, but a lot of people try to keep most of the picture in their head.
Oh, like the individual teams, individual contributors try to.
At a high level, yeah. You don't know exactly how every piece works, of course, but one thing I generally believe is that it's sometimes useful to zoom out and look at the entire map. And I think this is true for like a technical problem. I think this is true for like innovating in business. But things come together in surprising ways, and having an understanding of that whole picture, even if most of the time you're operating in the weeds in one area, pays off with surprising insights. In fact, one of the things that I used to have, and I think was super valuable, was I used to have like a good map of that all of the frontier, or most of the frontiers in the tech industry. And I could sometimes see these connections or new things that were possible that if I were only, deep in one area, I wouldn't be able to like have the idea for, because I wouldn't have all the data. And I don't really have that much anymore. I'm like super deep now. But I know that it's a valuable thing.
You're not the man you used to be, so.
Very different job now than what I used to have.
Speaking of zooming out, let's zoom out to another cheeky thing, but profound thing perhaps that you said. You tweeted about needing $7 trillion.
I did not tweet about that. I never said like, we're raising $7 trillion, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, that's somebody else.
Yeah.
Oh, but you said, fuck it, maybe 8, I think.
Okay, I mean like once there's like misinformation out in the world.
Oh, you mean, but sort of misinformation may have a foundation of like insight there.
Look, I think compute is going to be the currency of the future. I think it will be maybe the most precious commodity in the world. And I think we should be investing heavily to make a lot more compute. Compute is, it's an unusual, I think it's going to be an unusual market. People think about the market for like chips for multiple phones or something like that. And you can say that, okay, there's 8 billion people in the world, maybe 7 billion of them have phones, maybe there's 6 billion, let's say. They upgrade every 2 years, so the market per year is 3 billion system on chip for smartphones. And if you make 30 billion, you will not sell 10 times as many phones because most people have one phone. But compute is different. Like intelligence is going to be more like energy or something like that, where the only thing that I think makes sense to talk about is at price X, the world will use this much compute, and at price Y, the world will use this much compute. Because if it's really cheap, I'll have it like reading my email all day. It's like giving me suggestions for what I maybe should think about or work on, and trying to cure cancer. And if it's really expensive, maybe I'll use it. The world will use it to try to cure cancer. So I think the world is going to want a tremendous amount of compute. And there's a lot of parts of that that are hard. Energy is the hardest part. Building data centers is also hard. The supply chain is hard. And then, of course, fabricating enough chips is hard. But this seems to be where things are going. Like, we're going to want an amount of compute that's just hard to reason about right now.
How do you solve the energy puzzle? Nuclear?
That's what I believe.
Fusion?
That's what I believe.
Nuclear fusion?
Yeah.
Who's going to solve that?
I think helium's doing the best work, but I'm happy there's like a race for fusion right now. Nuclear fission, I think, is also like quite amazing, and I hope as a world we can re-embrace that. It's really sad to me how the history of that went, and hope we get back to it in a meaningful way.
So to you, part of the puzzle is nuclear fission, like nuclear reactors as we currently have them, and a lot of people are terrified because of Chernobyl and so on.
Well, I think we should make new reactors. I think it's just like, it's a shame that industry kind of ground to a halt.
And what, just mass hysteria is how you explain the halt.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know humans, but that's one of the dangers. That's one of the security threats for nuclear fission is humans seem to be really afraid of it. And that's something we have to incorporate into the calculus of it. So that's to kind of win people over and to show how safe it is.
I worry about that for AI. I think some things are going to go theatrically wrong with AI. I don't know what the percent chance is that I eventually get shot, but it's not zero.
Oh, like we want to stop this.
Maybe.
How do you decrease the theatrical nature of it? You know, I've already started to hear rumblings, because I do talk to people on both sides of the political spectrum, hear rumblings where it's going to be politicized, AI, going to be politicized. It really worries me, because it's like maybe the right is against AI and the left is for AI because it's going to help the people, or whatever the narrative and formulation is. That really worries me. And then the theatrical nature of it can be leveraged fully. How do you fight that?
I think it will get caught up in like left versus right wars. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but I think that's just what happens with anything of consequence, unfortunately. What I meant more about theatrical risks is, like, AI is going to have, I believe, tremendously more good consequences than bad ones, but it is going to have bad ones. And there will be some bad ones that are bad but not theatrical. You know, like, a lot more people have died of air pollution than nuclear reactors, for example. But most people worry more about living next to a nuclear reactor than a coal plant. But something about the way we're wired is that although there's many different kinds of risks we have to confront, the ones that make a good climax scene of a movie carry much more weight with us than the ones that are very bad over a long period of time but on a slow burn.
Well, that's why truth matters, and hopefully AI can help us see the truth of things, to have balance, to understand what the actual risk or the actual dangers of things in the world. What are the pros and cons of the competition in the space and competing with Google, Meta, XAI, and others?
I have a pretty straightforward answer to this that maybe become more nuanced later, but the pros seem obvious, which is that we get better products and more innovation faster and cheaper, and all the reasons competition is good. And the con is that I think if we're not careful, it could lead to an increase in sort of an arms race that I'm nervous about.
Do you feel the pressure of the arms race, like in some negative part of that?
Yeah, in some ways, for sure. We spend a lot of time talking about the need to prioritize safety, and I've said for a long time that I think if you think of a quadrant of slow timelines to the start of AGI, long timelines, and then a short takeoff or fast takeoff, I think short timelines, slow takeoff is the safest quadrant and the one I'd most like us to be in. But I do want to make sure we get that slow takeoff.
Part of the problem I have with this kind of slight beef with Elon is that their silos are created, and that as opposed to collaboration on the safety aspect of all of this, it tends to go to silos and closed. Open source perhaps in the model.
Elon says at least that he cares a great deal about AI safety and is really worried about it, and I assume that he's not going to race on safely.
Yeah, but collaboration here I think is really beneficial for everybody on that front.
Not really the thing he's most known for.
Well, he is known for caring about humanity, and humanity benefits from collaboration. And so there's always a tension and incentives and motivations. In the end, I do hope humanity prevails.
I was thinking, someone just reminded me the other day about how the day that he got surpassed Jeff Bezos for richest person in the world, he tweeted a silver medal at Jeff Bezos. I hope we have less stuff like that as people start to work on
I agree.
towards it, yeah.
I think Elon is a friend and he's a beautiful human being, and one of the most important humans ever. That stuff is not good.
The amazing stuff about Elon is amazing, and I super respect him. I think we need him. All of us should be rooting for him and need him to step up as a leader through this next phase.
Yeah, I hope you can have one without the other. But sometimes humans are flawed and complicated and all that kind of stuff.
There's a lot of really great leaders throughout history.
Yeah, and we can each be the best version of ourselves and strive to do so. Let me ask you, Google, with the help of search, has been dominating the past 20 years. I think it's fair to say, in terms of the access, the world's access to information, how we interact and so on. It's one of the nerve-wracking things for Google, but for the entirety of people in the space is thinking about how are people going to access information.
Yeah.
Like you said, people show up to GPT as a starting point. So is OpenAI going to really take on this thing that Google started 20 years ago, which is how do we get?
I find that boring. I mean, if the question is if we can build a better search engine than Google or whatever, then sure, we should go, people should use a better product. But I think that would so understate what this can be. Google shows you 10 blue links, 13 ads and then 10 blue links. And that's one way to find information. But the thing that's exciting to me is not that we can go build a better copy of Google search, but that maybe there's just some much better way to help people find and act and synthesize information. I think ChatGPT is that for some use cases, and hopefully we'll make it be like that for a lot more use cases. But I don't think it's that interesting to say, how do we go do a better job of giving you 10 ranked web pages to look at than what Google does? Maybe it's really interesting to go say, how do we help you get the answer, the information you need? How do we help create that in some cases, synthesize that in others, or point you to it and yet others? But a lot of people have tried to just make a better search engine than Google, and it is a hard technical problem, it is a hard branding problem, it is a hard ecosystem problem. I don't think the world needs an copy of Google.
And integrating a chat client like a ChatGPT with a search engine,
That's cooler.
it's cool, but it's tricky. It's if you just do it simply, it's awkward because if you just shove it in there,
Yeah,
it can be awkward.
as you might guess, we are interested in how to do that well. That would be an example of a cool thing. That's not just
Like a heterogeneous,
the
integrating.
intersection of LLMs plus search. I don't think anyone's cracked the code on yet. I would love to go do that. I think that'd be cool.
Yeah. What about the ad side? Have you ever considered modernization?
I kind of hate ads just as an aesthetic choice. I think ads needed to happen on the internet for a bunch of reasons to get it going, but it's a more mature industry. The world is richer now. I like that people pay for ChatGPT and know that the answers they're getting are not influenced by advertisers. I'm sure there's an ad unit that makes sense for LLMs, and I'm sure there's a way to participate in the transaction stream in an unbiased way that is okay to do. But it's also easy to think about the dystopic visions of the future where you ask ChatGPT something and it says, oh, here's, you should think about buying this product, or you should think about, this going here for your vacation or whatever. And I don't know, we have a very simple business model and I like it. And I know that I'm not the product. I know I'm paying, and that's how the business model works. And when I go use Twitter or Facebook or Google or any other great product, but ad-supported great product, I don't love that. And I think it gets worse, not better, in the world of AI.
Yeah, I can imagine AI would be better at showing the best kind of version of ads, not in a dystopic future, but where the ads are for things you actually need. But then, does that system always result in the ads driving the kind of stuff that's shown? No, it's, yeah, I think it was a really bold move of Wikipedia not to do advertisements, but then it makes it very challenging, as a business model. So you're saying the current thing with OpenAI is sustainable from a business perspective?
Well, we have to figure out how to grow, but we'll find we're gonna figure that out. If the question is, do I think we can have a great business that pays for our compute needs without ads, that I think the answer is yes.
Sure. Well, that's promising. I also just don't want to completely throw out ads as a.
I'm not saying that. I guess I'm saying I have a bias against them.
Yeah, because I have also bias and just a skepticism in general. And in terms of interface, because I personally just have like a spiritual dislike of crappy interfaces. Which is why AdSense, when it first came out, was a big leap forward versus like animated banners or whatever. But like, it feels like there should be many more leaps forward in advertisements that doesn't interfere with the consumption of the content and doesn't interfere in a big fundamental way, which is like what you were saying, like it will manipulate the truth to suit the advertiser. So let me ask you about safety, but also bias, and like safety in the short term, safety in the long term. The Gemini 1.5 came out recently. There's a lot of drama around it, speaking of theatrical things. And it generated black Nazis and black founding fathers. I mean, fair to say it was, a bit on the ultra woke side. But that's a concern for people that, if there is a human layer within companies that modifies the safety or the harm caused by a model, that they will introduce a lot of bias that fits sort of an ideological lean within a company. How do you deal with that?
I mean, we work super hard not to do things like that. We've made our own mistakes, like others. I assume Google will learn from this one, so like others. It is all. Like, these are not easy problems. One thing that we've been thinking about more and more is, and this is a great idea, somebody here had, like, it'd be nice to write out what the desired behavior of a model is, make that public, take input on it, say, here's how this model is supposed to behave, and explain the edge cases too. And then when a model is not behaving in a way that you want, it's at least clear about whether it's a bug the company should fix or behaving as intended and you should debate the policy. And right now it can sometimes be caught in between. Like, black Nazi is obviously ridiculous, but there are a lot of other kind of subtle things that you can make a judgment call on either way.
Yeah, but sometimes if you write it out and make it public, you can use kind of language that's, the Google's AI principle is a very high level.
That's not what I'm talking about. That doesn't work. Like, you have to say, when you ask it to do thing X, it's supposed to respond in way Y.
So it's literally, who's better, Trump or Biden? What's the expected response from a model? Like something like very concrete.
Yeah, I'm open to a lot of ways a model could behave them, but I think you should have to say, here's the principle and here's what it should say in that case.
That would be really nice. That would be really nice. And then everyone kind of agrees. Because there's this anecdotal data that people pull out all the time, and if there's some clarity about other representative anecdotal examples, you can define.
And then when it's a bug, the company can fix that.
Right. Then it'd be much easier to deal with black Nazi type of image generation if there's great examples. Yeah. So San Francisco is a bit of an ideological bubble, tech in general as well. Do you feel the pressure of that within a company, that there's like a lean towards the left politically that affects the product, that affects the team?
I feel very lucky that we don't have the challenges at OpenAI that I have heard of at a lot of other companies. I think I think part of it is like every company's got some ideological thing. We have one about AGI and belief in that, and it pushes out some others. Like we are much less caught up in the culture war than I've heard about a lot of other companies. San Francisco invests in all sorts of ways, of course.
So that doesn't infiltrate OpenAI
I'm sure it does in all sorts of subtle ways, but not in the obvious. Like I think we've had our flare-ups for sure, like any company, but I don't think we have anything like what I hear about happening in other companies here.
Well, what's in general is the process for the bigger question of safety? How do you provide that layer that protects the model from doing crazy dangerous things?
I think there will come a point where that's mostly what we think about the whole company. And it won't be like, it's not like you have one safety team. It's like when we ship GPT-4, that took the whole company through all these different aspects and put together, and I think it's going to take that. More and more of the company thinks about those issues all the time.
That's literally what humans will be thinking about the more powerful AI becomes. So most of the employees at OpenAI will be thinking safety, or at least to some degree.
Broadly defined, yes.
Yeah. I wonder what are the full broad definition of that? Like, what are the different harms that could be caused? Is this like on a technical level, or is this almost like
It'll be all those things. It'll be, yeah, I was going to say, it'll be people, state actors trying to steal the model. It'll be all of the technical alignment work. It'll be societal impacts, economic impacts. It's not just like we have one team thinking about how to align the model. And it's really going to be like getting to the good outcome is going to take the whole effort.
how hard do you think people, state actors perhaps, are trying to hack? First of all, infiltrate OpenAI, but second of all, like infiltrate unseen.
They're trying.
What kind of access do they have?
I don't actually want any further details on this one.
Okay. But I presume it'll be more and more as time goes on.
That feels reasonable.
Boy, what a dangerous space. What aspect of the leap, and sorry to linger on this, even though you can't quite say details yet, but what aspects of the leap from GPT-4 to GPT-5 are you excited about?
I'm excited about being smarter. And I know that sounds like a glib answer, but I think the really special thing happening is that it's not like it gets better in this one area and worse to others. It's getting like better across the board. That's, I think, super cool.
Yeah, there's this magical moment. I mean, you meet certain people, you hang out with people, and you talk to them. You can't quite put a finger on it, but they kind of get you. It's not intelligence, really. It's like, it's something else. And that's probably how I would characterize the progress of GPT. It's not like, yeah, you can point out, look, you didn't get this or that. It's just, to which degree is there this intellectual connection? To, like, you feel like there's an understanding in your crappy formulated prompts that you're doing, that it grasps the deeper question behind the question that you're. Yeah, I'm also excited by that. I mean, all of us love being understood, heard and understood.
That's for sure.
That's a weird feeling. Even like with programming, like when you're programming and you say something that just the completion that GPT might do. It's just such a good feeling when it got you, like what you're thinking about. And I look forward to it getting you even better. On the programming front, looking out into the future, how much programming do you think humans will be doing 5, 10 years from now?
I mean, a lot, but I think it'll be in a very different shape. Like, maybe some people program entirely in natural language.
Entirely natural language.
I mean, no one programs like writing byte code or something. No one programs with hunt cards anymore. I'm sure you know that. As someone who does like that, you know what I mean.
Yeah, you're gonna get a lot of angry comments now. Yeah, there's very few. I've been looking for people who program Fortran. It's hard to find, even Fortran. I hear you, but that changes the nature of what the skill set or the predisposition for the kind of people we call programmers. Then
Change the skill set. But how much it changes the predisposition, I'm not sure.
same kind of puzzle solving, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, programming is hard. Like how get like that last 1% to close the gap? How hard is that?
Yeah, I think with most other cases, the best practitioners of the craft will use multiple tools, and they'll do some work in natural language, and when they need to go, write C for something, they'll do that.
Will we see humanoid robots or humanoid robot brains from OpenAI at some point?
At some point.
How important is embodied AI to you?
I think it's like sort of depressing if we have AGI and the only way to get things done in the physical world is to make a human go do it. So I really hope that as part of this transition, as the space change, we also get humanoid robots or some sort of physical world robots.
I mean, OpenAI has some history, quite a bit of history working in robotics.
Yeah.
But it hasn't quite done.
We're a small company, we have to really focus. And also robots were hard for the wrong reason at the time, but we will return to robots in some way at some point.
That sounds both inspiring and menacing.
Why?
Because immediately we will return to robots. It's kind of like an Terminator.
We will return to work on developing robots. We will not turn ourselves into robots.
Yeah. When do you think you and we as humanity will build AGI?
I used to love to speculate on that question. I have realized since that I think it's very poorly formed, and that people use extremely different definitions for what AGI is. And so I think it makes more sense to talk about when we'll build systems that can do capability X or Y or Z, rather than when we kind of hopefully cross this 1 mile marker. So AGI is also not an ending. It's much more of it's closer to a beginning, but it's much more a mile marker than either of those things. But what I would say, in the interest of not trying to dodge a question, is I expect that by the end of this decade, and possibly somewhat sooner than that, we will have quite capable systems that we look at and say, wow, that's really remarkable. If we could look at it now, maybe we could adjust it, but by the time you get there.
Yeah, but if you look at ChatGPT, 135, and you show that to Alan Turing, or not even Alan Turing, people in the 90s, they would be like, this is definitely AGI. Well, not definitely, but there's a lot of experts that would say this is AGI.
Yeah, but I don't think 3.5 changed the world. It maybe changed the world's expectations for the future, and that's actually really important. And it did kind of get more people to take this seriously and put us on this new trajectory, and that's really important too. And so again, I don't want to undersell it. I think I could retire after that accomplishment and be pretty happy with my career. But as an artifact, I don't think we're going to look back at that and say that was a threshold that really changed the world itself.
So to you, you're looking for some really major transition in the world.
For me, that's part of what AGI implies.
Like singularity level transition?
No, definitely not.
But just a major, like the internet being like Google search did, I guess. What was the transition point?
Does the global economy feel any different to you now, materially different to you now than it did before we launched GPT-4? I think you would say no.
No. It might be just a really nice tool for a lot of people to use and help you with a lot of stuff that doesn't fit different. You're saying that.
I mean, again, people define AGI all sorts of different ways, so maybe you have a different definition than I do. But for me, I think that should be part of it.
There could be major theatrical moments also. What to you would be an impressive thing if you had to do? Like you are alone in the room with the system.
This is personally important to me. I don't know if this is the right definition. I think when a system can significantly increase the rate of scientific discovery in the world, that's like a huge deal. I believe that most real economic growth comes from scientific and technological progress.
I agree with you. That's why I don't like the skepticism about science in the recent years. But actual rate, like measurable rate of scientific discovery. But even just seeing a system have really novel intuition, like scientific intuition, even that would be just incredible.
Yeah.
You quite possibly would be the person to build the AGI and to be able to interact with it before anyone else does. What kind of stuff would you talk about?
I mean, definitely the researchers here will do that before I do. So, but I've actually thought a lot about this question. If I were someone with like, and this is, as we talked about, I think this is a vast framework, but if someone were like, okay, Sam, we're finished. Here's a laptop. This is the AGI. You can go talk to it. I find it surprisingly difficult to say what I would ask, that I would expect that first AGI to be able to answer. Like that first one is not going to be the one which is like, go like, I don't think, like go explain to me like the grand unified theory of physics, the theory of everything for physics. I'd love to ask that question. I'd love to know the answer to that question.
You can ask yes or no questions about, does such a theory exist? Can it exist?
Well, then those are the first questions I would ask.
Yes or no? It's just very, and then based on that, are there other alien civilizations out there? Yes or no? What's your intuition? And then you just ask that.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't expect that this first AGI can answer any of those questions, even as yes or no. But those, if it could, those would be very high on my list.
Maybe you can start assigning probabilities.
Maybe we need to go invent more technology and measure more things first.
But if it's any AGI, oh, I see. It just doesn't have enough data.
I mean, maybe it says like, you want to know the answer to this question about physics. I need you to like build this machine and make these 5 measurements and tell me that.
Yeah, like what the hell do you want from me? I need the machine first, and I'll help you deal with the data in that machine. Maybe it'll help you build a machine.
Maybe.
And on the mathematical side, maybe prove some things. Are you interested in that side of things too? Like formalized exploration of ideas? Whoever builds AGI first gets a lot of power. Do you trust yourself with that much power?
Look, I was gonna. I'll just be very honest with this answer. I was gonna say, and I still believe this, that it is important that I, nor any other one person, have total control over OpenAI or over AGI. And I think you want a robust governance system. I can point out a whole bunch of things about all of our board drama from last year, about how I didn't fight it initially and was just like, yeah, that's, the will the board, I think it's a really bad decision. And then later I clearly did fight it, and I can explain the nuance and why I think it was okay for me to fight it later. But as many people have observed, although the board had the legal ability to fire me, in practice it didn't quite work. And that is its own kind of governance failure. Now, again, I feel like I can completely defend the specifics here, and I think most people would agree with that, but it does make it harder for me to like look you in the eye and say, hey, the board can just fire me. I continue to not want super voting control over OpenAI. I never have, never had it, never wanted it. Even after all this craziness, I still don't want it. I continue to think that no company should be making these decisions, and that we really need governments to put rules of the road in place. And I realized that that means people like Mark Andreessen or whatever will claim I'm going for regulatory capture, and I'm just willing to be misunderstood there. It's not true, and I think in the fullness of time it'll get proven out why this is important. But I think I have made plenty of bad decisions for OpenAI along the way, and a lot of good ones, and I am proud of the track record overall. But I don't think any one person should, and I don't think any one person will. I think this is like too big of a thing now, and it's happening throughout society in a good and healthy way. I don't think any one person should be in control of an AGI. That would be, or this whole movement towards AGI. And I don't think that's what's happening.
Thank you for saying that. That was really powerful and that was really insightful. That this idea that the board can fire you is legally true. But you can, and human beings can manipulate the masses into overriding the board and so on. But I think there's also a much more positive version of that where the people still have power. So the board can't be too powerful either. There's a balance of power in all of this.
Balance of power is a good thing for sure.
Are you afraid of losing control of the AGI itself? There's a lot of people who worry about existential risk, not because of state actors, not because of security concerns, but because of the AI itself.
That is not my top worry. As I currently see things, there have been times I'll worry about that more. There may be times, again, in the future where that's my top worry. It's not my top worry right now.
What's your intuition about it not being a worry? Because there's a lot of other stuff to worry about, essentially. You think you could be surprised? We,
For sure.
could be surprised.
Like, saying it's not my top worry doesn't mean, we need to, I think we need to work on it super hard. We have great people here who do work on that. I think there's a lot of other things we also have to get right.
To you, it's not super easy to escape the box at this time. Like, connect to the internet.
We talked about theatrical risks earlier. That's a theatrical risk like that. That is a thing that can really take over how people think about this problem. And there's a big group of very smart, I think very well-meaning AI safety researchers that got super hung up on this one problem. I'd argue without much progress, but super hung up on this one problem. I'm actually happy that they do that because I think we do need to think about this more. But I think it pushed out of the space of discourse a lot of the other very significant AI-related risks.
Let me ask you about you tweeting with no capitalization. Is the shift key broken on your keyboard?
Why does anyone care about that?
I deeply care.
But why? Other people ask me about that too.
Yeah.
Any intuition?
I think it's the same reason. There's this poet's E. Cummings that mostly doesn't use capitalization, say fuck you to the system kind of thing. And I think people are very paranoid because they want you to follow the rules.
You think that's what it's about?
I think it's
It's like this guy doesn't follow the rules. He doesn't capitalize his tweets.
Yeah.
This seems really dangerous.
He seems like an anarchist.
Doesn't.
Are you just being poetic, hipster? What's the
I grew up as
follow the rules, Sam?
I grew up as a very online kid. I'd spent a huge amount of time chatting with people back in the days where you did it on a computer and you could log off Instant Messenger at some point. And I never capitalized there. As I think most internet kids didn't. Or maybe they still don't, I don't know. And actually, this is now I'm really trying to reach for something, but I think capitalization has gone down over time. If you read old English writing, they capitalize a lot of random words in the middle of sentences, nouns and stuff that we just don't do anymore. I personally think it's sort of a dumb construct that we capitalize the letter at the beginning of a sentence and certain names and whatever, but that's fine. And then I used to, I think, even capitalize my tweets because I was trying to sound professional or something. I hadn't capitalized my private DMs or whatever in a long time. And then slowly, stuff shorter form, less formal stuff has slowly drifted to closer and closer to how I would text my friends if I pull up a Word document and I'm like writing a strategy normal for the company or something, I always capitalize that. And I'm writing like a lot on kind of more like formal message. I always use capitalization there too. So I still remember how to do it. But even that may fade out. I don't know. Like but I never spend time thinking about this. So I don't have like a ready-made.
Well, it's interesting. Well, it's good to first of all know that the shift key is not broken. I'm
Of
just mostly concerned about
No,
your
of
well-being on that front.
I wonder if people like still capitalize their Google searches. Like if you're writing something just to yourself or their ChatGPT queries, if you're writing something just to yourself, do you still do some people still bother to capitalize?
Probably not. But yeah, there's a percentage, but it's small.
The thing that would make me do it is if people were like, it's a sign of, but like, because I'm sure I could like force myself to use capital letters, obviously. And if it felt like a sign of respect to people or something, not I go do it.
Yeah.
But I don't know, I don't think about this. Like,
There's a disrespect, but I think it's just the conventions of civility that have a momentum, and then you realize it's not actually important for civility, and it's not a sign of respect or disrespect. But I think there's a movement of people that just want you to have a philosophy around it so they can let go of this whole capitalization.
I don't think anybody else thinks about this. I mean, maybe some people, I know some people do.
Every day, for many hours a day. So I'm really grateful we clarified it.
Can't be the only person that doesn't capitalize tweets.
You're the only CEO of a company that doesn't capitalize tweets.
I don't think that's true, but maybe.
All right, we're
I'd be very
surprised. And return to this topic later. Given Thor's ability to generate simulated worlds, let me ask you a pothead question. Does this increase your belief, if you ever had one, that we live in a simulation? Maybe a simulated world generated by an AI system.
Yes, somewhat. I don't think that's like the strongest piece of evidence. I think the fact that we can generate worlds should increase everyone's probability somewhat, or at least openness to it somewhat. But I was like certain we'd be able to do something like Sora at some point. It happened faster than I thought, but I guess that was not a big update.
Yeah, but the fact that, and presumably we'll get better and better, the fact that you can generate worlds, they're novel. They're based in some aspect of training data, but when you look at them, they're novel. That makes you think how easy it is to do this thing. How easy it is to create universes. Entire video game worlds that seem ultra realistic and photorealistic, and then how easy is it to get lost in that world? First with the VR headset, and then on a physics-based level.
He said to me recently, I thought it was a super profound insight, that there are these very simple sounding, but very psychedelic insights that exist sometimes. So the square root function. Square root of 4, no problem. Square root of 2, okay, now I have to think about this new kind of number. But once I come up with this easy idea of a square root function that you can kind of explain to a child and exists by even looking at some simple geometries, then you can ask the question of what is the square root of -1. And that is, why it's like a psychedelic thing, that takes you into some whole other kind of reality. And you can come up with lots of other examples, but I think this idea that the lowly square root operator can offer such a profound insight and a new realm of knowledge applies in a lot of ways. And I think there are a lot of those operators for why people may think that any version that they like of the simulation hypothesis is maybe more likely than they thought before. But for me, the fact that SOAR worked is not in the top 5.
I do think, broadly speaking, AI will serve as those kinds of gateways at its best. Simple, psychedelic-like gateways to another way of seeing reality.
That seems for certain.
That's pretty exciting. I haven't done ayahuasca before, but I will soon. I'm going to the aforementioned Amazon jungle in a few weeks.
You excited?
Yeah, I'm excited for it. Not the ayahuasca part, that's great, whatever. But I'm going to spend several weeks in the jungle, deep in the jungle. And it's exciting, but it's terrifying. Because there's a lot of things that can eat you there and kill you and poison you. And but it's also nature, and it's the machine of nature. And you can't help but appreciate the machinery of nature in the Amazon jungle, because it's just like this system that just exists and renews itself like every second, every minute, every hour. It's just the machine. It makes you appreciate like this thing we have here, this human thing came from somewhere. This evolutionary machine has created that, and it's most clearly on display in the jungle. So we'll try to make it out alive. If not, this will be the last conversation we had, so I really deeply appreciate it. Do you think, as I mentioned before, there's other alien civilizations out there, intelligent ones? When you look up at the skies.
I deeply want to believe that the answer is yes. I do find that kind of I find the Fermi paradox very, very puzzling.
I find it scary. That intelligence is not good at handling
Very scary.
powerful technologies. But at the same time, I think I'm pretty confident that there's just a very large number of intelligent alien civilizations out there. It might just be really difficult to travel through space.
Very possible.
And it also makes me think about the nature of intelligence. Maybe we're really blind to what intelligence looks like. Maybe AI will help us see that. It's not as simple as IQ tests and simple puzzle solving. There's something bigger. What gives you hope about the future of humanity? This thing we got going on, this human civilization.
I think the past is like a lot. I mean, if we just look at what humanity has done in a not very long period of time. You know, huge problems, deep flaws, lots to be super ashamed of, but on the whole, very inspiring. Gives me a lot of hope.
Just the trajectory of it all.
Yeah.
That we're together pushing towards a better future.
It is. You know, one thing that I wonder about is AGI going to be more like some single brain, or is it more like the sort of scaffolding in society between all of us? You have not had a great deal of genetic drift from your great-great-great-grandparents, and yet what you're capable of is dramatically different. What you know is dramatically different, and that's not because of biological change. It is because, I mean, you got a little bit healthier probably, you have modern medicine, you eat better, whatever. But what you have is this scaffolding that we all contributed to, built on top of. No one person is going to go build the iPhone. No one person is going to go discover all of science, and yet you get to use it. And that gives you incredible ability in some sense that, like, we all created that. And that fills me with hope for the future. That was a very collective thing.
Yeah, we really are standing on the shoulders of giants. You mentioned when we were talking about theatrical, dramatic AI risks that sometimes you might be afraid for your own life. Do you think about your death? Are you afraid of it?
I mean, if I got shot tomorrow and I knew it today, I'd be like, oh, that's sad. I I want to see what's going to happen.
Yeah.
What a curious time. What an interesting time. But I mostly just feel like very grateful for my life.
The moments that you did get. Yeah, me too. It's a pretty awesome life. I get to enjoy also creations of humans, of which I believe ChatGPT is one of, and everything that OpenAI is doing. Sam, it's really an honor and pleasure to talk to you again.
Great to talk to you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this conversation with Sam Altman. To support this podcast, please check out our sponsors in the description. And now, let me leave you with some words from Arthur C. Clarke. It may be that our role on this planet is not to worship God, but to create Him. Thank you for listening. I hope to see you next time.
Sean. Let's go to Eduardo. Calling all the way from Chicago. Eduardo. You're on KFI. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for taking my call. Yeah, what this shows is a biased media, and I listen to I go kind of voted for President Trump. This is pretty ridiculous. There's so many important issues to talk about, like immigration and crime. So, go Trump all the way.
All right, Eduardo, thanks for calling in. Let's go to Julie. Julie, you're on camera.
Hi, good afternoon. I just want to state that everybody knows Trump will never receive a fair trial as long as the Democrats are in control of this country. And the other thing I want to say is Stormy Daniels refused her tax records to show that she claimed $130,000 of flash money. If anybody should be on trial, it's Biden and his administration for treason, because he is destroying this country. People need to
right
wake
over
up
the shoulders
and
of
realize what is
Commander
going on.
Shin Kimbrough
Trump
and
and all of my
Pilot
family,
Megan Parker,
Trump has my
Parker on the right.
vote and all of my family's vote, and people really need to wake up and realize what's going on and where this country is headed under the Biden administration.
All right, Julie, thank you. Let's go to Ryan. Ryan, you're on KFI. Go ahead.
See what we were mentioning earlier, where Dragon was the legislature previously lay at in the background. Now it is almost adjacent.
All right, let's go to Michelle. You're on KFI. Go
As the
ahead.
International Space Station,
Michelle.
as it's making its way to the docking access
Yes, no.
at Waypoint 1.
No.
Go ahead, speak.
Sorry, you picked up without even anything that was clear. I am not that he was found guilty. I am a moderate Democrat, and I feel like if this was a Democrat who got convicted, the narrative would be completely different from the Republican.
Yeah, I mean, most of the media has been cheering this all along. And they have, and usually progressive people, or liberal people, Democrats, however you want to classify them, are really into the civil rights aspect of the justice system.
Right.
And
Below the
You don't think he did
station
anything wrong?
in front of the docking port.
do I think he did anything wrong?
Almost
I
complete,
think,
just a few
I
minutes
think
away.
he probably committed paperwork crimes, which is usually settled. And no,
Okay, great
the
views
felony
from all
conviction
around.
is completely
From the
bogus.
station side, from the
The
Dragon side,
misdemeanor paperwork crime I can see, except the
the
statute
outline
of
of the station
limitations right now.
displays.
So as far as being convicted in 2024 of anything, I'd say no. I mean, you'd have to have nailed him within the first few years of the
space station.
statute
Almost at the
of
docking access,
limitations.
about
And they
2.5
did
minutes
turn
to go
it into
until
a
it's
federal
moved to
felony
Waypoint 1.
from a state prosecutor is just
As a
preposterous.
reminder,
And
Dragon is
this
trying to
may very well be
contact they aren't using those display panels to find that. This is
My thing is
monitor
that I don't think people would be
each
upset
step of the way.
if it wasn't for Trump. Like they wouldn't be. It just is beyond me. It's like right is right, wrong
who's basically
Oh, I see what you're saying, yeah.
the way it's done.
Well, I think they're in.
I worked with right and wrong, but somewhere in between here, in the
That's a
last
dragon,
5 or 10 years,
yeah.
they got my dad into the last
Better view, a lot
anymore.
clearer now that
But
it's
right is right, wrong is wrong. That's it.
140
I
meters
feel like our
away.
country is no longer all
See the
over.
nose going
Yeah,
through the
I
Guinness
think people are having
extended,
problems with him being convicted of felonies, possibly facing prison time.
He's never gonna be in prison.
Zenith
They
side.
can't put an ex-president in prison.
It's very good zoomed in.
I'll mark that down. We'll see. July.
Do that.
Okay, Michelle. Thanks very
Really,
much.
you could
All right, bye.
almost make out those four
Bill, you're on campfire.
thrusters,
Hey, I'm trying to tell you here, what was Stormy
before
did with their
versus
report,
of
if
the
nothing else,
dragon
but to
castle.
incent
And
the
this
jury,
is
there may be a whole
adjusting
bunch
the
of New York crews.
aperture of the station cameras.
I just don't understand this, and I totally agree with
Dragon
the,
SpaceX on the big loop.
misdemeanor here. It was not
Capture
a,
extension will begin shortly.
it was not a felony, it never
Dragon
was.
will continue to
And
waypoint
hearing
2
all of her lower
with the
details,
additional lighting
the
assessment
judge is
occurring
gonna
at
lose the
410 meters
appeal
as
as
previously
far as the irrelevance
current
of
awareness.
Stormy
If sunlight
Daniels'
results in the
testimony.
loss of the
I know. We had to hear how she spanked Trump with the Time magazine cover in his own
Dragonite
face.
geofilters, Dragon will
Yeah,
autonomously
what
retreat
does that
back
have
to
to do
waypoint
with legal documents?
Nothing.
One,
Yeah, thanks for the
remaining
call. All
on
right,
closed
we got
loop
another round
control
coming
using
up. 800-5201-KFI, 800-5201-KFI. Still waiting on the Manhattan DA News Conference. Alvin Bragg, Deborah Mark Live, KFI, 24-hour news.
As you can hear, former President Trump has been found guilty on all 34 felony counts in his hush money trial from New York. Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg is expected to respond to the guilty verdict against former President Trump. The podium, you can see it on TV. People have been coming into the news conference, so as soon as that happens, we'll bring it to you. More than 230,000 migrants illegally crossed the border into California last year, and Amazon's pharmacy is officially operating in California. We're going to go to 10, and we will check in with the KFI in the sky next.
Want to sell your home? Call Sellers Advantage. They will give you a cash offer. No need for repairs.
right in front of
You're
the
not
Dragon
going to
Max is
wait on
220
mortgage.
meters
You're not
away,
going
so
to wait
moving in
for
closer
contractors to fix your house.
to waypoint 2,
Sellers
just 20
Advantage
meters
makes a
away from the
competitive
Dragon
cash
Max.
offer.
Of course,
They can
we'll
close
be
in
monitoring
days.
along the way.
There are no real estate agents, no commissions. They might even offer a $10,000 advance to help with moving. Go read the videos online. Call for no obligation offer. 888-321-ANSIS. 888-321-ANSIS. 888-321-2747. SellersAdvantage.com. Area number 0961658.
All right, we are going to go to Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg. He has comments on the verdict.
Is cleared to ensure a good docking with the space station. Because this is all autonomous.
He is right at the podium right now, and he's going to be speaking any second.
Some visual cameras to align with the docking port. It's really important that we don't have that sunlight.
Jurors performing fundamental civic duty. Their service is literally the cornerstone of our judicial system.
SpaceX has you
We should
down here
all
on the big loop. How
be
many?
thankful for the careful attention that this jury paid to the evidence and the law, their time and commitment over these past several weeks. 12 everyday
I'm
New
going
Yorkers,
to repeat
of course,
the end of the
were
call. We
alternates,
did have a teacher's hand
heard
over.
testimony from 22 witnesses.
Following the lighting assessment, if we continue that sunlight results in a loss of the Dragonite geofilter,
Publishers,
Dragonite will autonomously retreat back to waypoint 1,
and others.
still on closed loop control using autonomous flight filters.
Text
I'll copy.
messages and emails. They heard recordings. They saw checks and invoices. Bank statements and calendar appointments. This type of white-collar prosecution
And for awareness, the
is core
C2V2 live
to what we do
reconfiguration has been
at the
completed.
Manhattan District Attorney's Office. In the 1930s, District Attorney Thomas Dewey ushered in an era of modern, independent, professional prosecutor. We're now near
just
years,
reiterated
dedicated
that
professionals
they
in this
will be
office have built
checking
upon
to make sure that
that
the
fine
sunlight
tradition.
is not
A
in the
major part
governmental
of our
systems
practice
between Dragon
during that nearly
and the
90
space
years
station.
has
If
been
that does
public
happen,
integrity work,
that
including
we will
cases involving
autonomously
jurors,
track
local and state
and
electeds,
wait until
public
we
service,
do
and others.
get some good
I want to thank this
visual
phenomenal
views for these
prosecution
systems to dock with
embody
each other. So
the finest
But Executive
traditions
Williams
of
is
this
coming
office:
into view a little bit
professionalism,
clearer now from the cameras aboard Dragon.
dedication, and
Dr.
service.
Edith Court,
They are model public servants, and I am proud and
I
humbled
was on the upper
to
portion
serve
of the
side by
screen.
side.
that's right. Now again, to reiterate, Dragon has
12.
passed waypoint 1, 220
Every
meters
day, jurors
in
vowed
front of the
to
station.
make a decision
Executive
based on
Authority
the
member to
evidence
go ahead and move
in
in
the law,
and approach 1,
and the evidence in the law.
and is heading towards
Their
waypoint 2.
deliberations led them to a unanimous conclusion
Now inside
beyond
the
a reasonable
shootout
doubt.
sphere,
The defendant,
is currently in the process of extending its soft capture that will be used to dock to the
falsifying
unit
business
of
records
chapter
in
of
the
the
first
first
degree, to conceal a
for
scheme
monitoring the
to
visual
corrupt
systems
the
of Dragon and
2016
would execute an automatic retreat
While
if the
this
sun was
defendant
interfering
may be
with the
unlike
optical
any
system
other
as it makes its
in
way
American history,
towards an approach.
we arrived at this trial
About 150
and ultimately
meters
today
away
this
from the station.
verdict in the same manner as every
We
other
have
case
such a great camera view here. You
By
can really
following
see
the
the
facts
detail
and the law,
on Dragon.
doing so without fear
Again, those
or favor.
4 bulkhead thrusters
I want to conclude by
with
expressing
the
deep
logo, the
gratitude
Dragon logo on the
to the
side of the
NYPD
visual.
and the officers of
Right,
the
we're getting
officers
better
of the
views
Office
as
of
it
Court
makes its way
Administration,
even closer to make
securing
contact
courthouse,
and capture
all of our
with the
safety,
space station.
making sure the courthouse and all of the other matters that are
There's so
important
much
in our own
record
right
here.
continue.
We may even anticipate a capture a little bit earlier than
Continue to
anticipated.
be
We're
and have always been incredible partners. Thank you.
looking at about 2:10 a.m. Pacific time. Might be at maybe closer to 2:07 p.m.
The judge just scheduled the sentencing for July 11th. We will speak in court in that time. He also said a motion schedule. We'll speak in our court filings as we've done throughout this proceeding. I do not.
The features of the space station coming in good view very clearly.
I do my job.
And you
Our
can see
job
kind
is
of
to
the detail
follow the facts of the law without fear or favor.
there, and as you mentioned,
And that's exactly what
the
we did here.
crew
Right,
one
feels gratitude to work
Dragon.
alongside phenomenal public servants who do that each and every day. The matters that you all write about, and I think the president, lots of matters that you don't. I did my job, we did our job. Many voices out there.
Right, that was confirmation
The
from
only
this
voice that matters is the
report
voice of the jury.
aboard the International Space Station from the space station.
Mr. Steinglass, many people said the prosecution was
He is going for docking and soft capturing
As far as
itself
how I feel at this moment,
fully extended
how do you feel? With Mr. Steinglass,
16 meters
some
of
of you
course.
probably saw him speak for a little bit the other day. So he's done his job as this team, and he just told me, tell him how I feel. He said that. I will just say enormous gratitude. Our system, I talked about the jurors
looking
at
at
the
your
beginning
screen
of my
report that
remarks.
we are
We have a phenomenal
down
system.
with is
12
directly in
everyday
the
New
middle of the
Yorkers
screen, that
listen
circular
to
area on the International
the
Space
judge's
Station.
directions. They follow them, as you saw them every day. They were careful and attentive. And so I feel deep gratitude to work alongside them, to be a part of this system. And I just want to echo that this is what we're doing every single day. I mean, during this trial, just this
Starting FSC
for
17,
all these wage theft,
CC1,
the
we are seeing some
resolution,
strange
sex crimes,
situations on the video, and
convictions,
we would like to close and
all sorts of work that's being done by phenomenal public service. So we're before you today on this obviously consequential matter, but this is what we do every day. Follow the facts and the law without fear of faith.
If the jail sentence parts, it's like the topic concerning would you just stay on enforcement of that sentence pending appeal? If that were a scenario,
Okay, so what
would
does
your
that
office
state
reject
instead
the
of?
state, sentence?
I'm gonna
Dragon SpaceX.
let our words and words speak for themselves when we get to the sentencing matter.
We did.
I'm not gonna address hypotheticals. They raise arguments, we'll respond. And I think your question underscores an important point. This is an act of one going to happen, right? We have other phases of this going ahead. We'll continue to do our speaking about this matter, about issues like that.
Alright, so that's great news. The aspect of it is all sorts of reference. Part of the Dragon navigation and control system for Dragon.
So my response again is I did my job,
Go with the sun there.
and I think particularly
Started
talking
at
about
now
the
inside
history of the office.
80 meters.
My personal history started as a
Dragon
prosecutor in
cars
2003 in
at
public
20 meters.
integrity unit
That's
in the New
designated
York
as
City
a
Attorney General's
council.
office.
Took it
And
back
served
to the
also in the public
for
integrity unit
whatever I need
in
to
the
do.
Southern District of
Dragon
New York.
7 and either
These are kind of cases I looked personally, and it's all more recognition of this office that I'm proud to lead.
if we are good, we expect to dock during this Passover and overload
I
daytime.
don't want to go into the whole body of litigation, but we now have a
Expected in
federal
less than 20 minutes.
court decision ruling on the legal theories. We had the state court decision on the omnibus motions, but most importantly, today we have the most important voice of all, and that's the voice of the jurors. They have spoken. Donald J. Trump has been convicted of 34 counts of falsifying business
Some of the
records.
feature range is to allow visiting vehicles on board station at the bottom. So we use the president to the International Space Station. Just in front of that. Actually, above that is the Crew Dragon Resilience.
That is Albert Bragg enjoying his moment of publicity after 34 guilty verdicts against Trump. Conway's coming up. Hey now, what a day, what a hungry Thursday day. So we got all the details on the big court hearing today that the NRA 190 Supreme Court. The big story, I don't know. I'm telling you what, this is a lesson. Don't go cheating your wife with 40 because this is what happened. Or anybody, 18 years later, anybody. You know, if you want to, but what comes first though, I was in a theory that, you know, the most successful guys in the world are the horniest guys in the world. But what came first? You know, the desire to have a lot of women or the desire to make money? I think it's all testosterone. It's high tea. Yeah. You know, and you know what? If you drink enough vodka and smoke cigarettes, you knock that out of your life. Did you test that out? It's a lot easier. You know, you're looking for me. Just they have blinders. Look at the Trump coming out. Obviously, we have the other Trump deal going on. Not in too much depth because it ultimately doesn't really affect your day-to-day life. But I will say, the people who have won today, you know, all the Democrats, they're going to have parties and I'd like to go to one of those. That's all. Probably only buying cigarettes. That's right. But there's going to be a lot of partying going on that they finally got this guy until the next poll comes out. Yeah, right. Or, you know, again, Trump's, I guess, his fundraising site, right? Yes, I heard that. Yeah, right. So, yeah, no, the intensity of his followers, who knows? It's going to get even greater, but does he got enough? Does he got enough charge? Right, but you know what? When you, like, you're a fan, you're a sports fan, and it's a 7-game series, and you lose, you know, a game or two or three, it sort of makes that 7th game even better. Yeah. You know, if you swept, like, you know, you're a Mets fan, if you swept the Braves in the National League Championship Series, it's okay, but man, if it goes out to Game 7,
walk off over. You'll remember that forever. Like the Dodgers best, most famous home run has to be Kirk Gibson. That's right. In the World Series to win that in the bottom of the ninth, 2 outs. Yeah, 3-2 pitch. That's the sweetest way. That's right. Don't give up. Michael Crusher is the news live. The KFI 24-hour newsroom. If you didn't like that opinion, keep listening. We've got a few more. KFI. KOST HD2. Los Angeles. Live everywhere. On the iHeartRadio app.
Dragon living at
So what's going on today? I'm Michael Crozier, live from the KFI 24-hour newsroom. As you've been hearing,
Found guilty by a jury of his peers in a New York courtroom. All 34 counts.
Former President Trump's become the first former president to be convicted of felony crimes. A jury in New York found him guilty of falsifying business records and a scheme to influence the 2016 election through hush money payments to the porn actress Stormy Daniels. Sentencing set for July 11th, days before Republicans are set to make him the 2024 nominee for president. Trump walked out saying the whole country is going to hell. And the jury is
Docking.
And that DA Alvin Bragg has just spoken following the verdict.
While this defendant may be unlike any other in American history, we arrived at this trial and ultimately today this verdict in the same manner as every other case that comes with court numbers.
Bragg says prosecutors follow facts and law without fear or favor. He says the only voices that matter to the trial jurors that found Trump guilty, Trump pleading not guilty, and has criticized Bragg throughout the trial. Shares of Trump's social or Trump media technology tumbled 9% after the verdict. The former President Trump's the chairman and leading shareholder of Trump Media, whose online portal for his campaign also appeared to be offline. The bill to limit households deal with transgender students is moving through the state legislature.
The bill would ban school districts from requiring staff to notify parents that their kids are transgender. President of the Chico Valley School District, Sonia Shaw, says the bill is government overreach.
It's an outrageous power grab disguised as progress, stripping away local control and dictating from above.
Supporters of the bill say it would protect students from bullying and harassment. They say so-called outing policies are a violation of the state constitution. Blake Troll, KFI News.
More than 230,000 migrants illegally crossed the border into California last year.
Deputy Chief Jeff Stelmacher says so far this year, agents have already apprehended 250,000 with 4 months still to go in the fiscal year.
Our mission is critical as we continue to face unprecedented challenges at our borders.
Stelmacher says the numbers are up in human trafficking and drug smuggling.
Over 1,200 pounds of fentanyl was seized here in San Diego sector, Tijuana corridor. This means that nearly 50% of all fentanyl seized by the U.S. Border Patrol on the national level was seized by San Diego sector Border Patrol agents.
Stelmacher says he still needs more agents and recruitment's been tough. Along the California-Mexico border, Steve Gregory, KFI News.
Well, just got a little harder. CCA Backer System data from 30 matches. Mortgage rates went up over 7% for a 30-year fixed rate loan.
Rate on the 15-year fixed out the 10 but going to 6.36%. Rates have been hovering in a range for some time now, but likely won't see any drastic changes until the Fed lowers interest rates.
The price of existing homes sold in April 2024 was $407,600, so based on a 20% down payment and a 7.1% percentage mortgage rate, the monthly payment of $2,207, which was the monthly mortgage payment as of yesterday, amounts to 27% of the typical family's monthly income. The Pentagon says it plans to churn out 100,000 artillery shells per month by the end of 2025 at a factory in North Texas. ABC's Jim Ryan says that's a tenfold increase from just a few years ago.
White House National Security Advisor John Kirby says the munitions will go into U.S. stockpiles, but also will be shipped to America's allies.
Ryan says for months, Ukrainian troops have only been able to fire a fraction of the shells shot at them by Russian forces. The defense bill passed by Congress and able to open the funding pipeline to the munitions factory in Texas. People will soon be able to order cheeses at Taco Bell restaurants across the country. Starting June 6th, people can try out the big cheese and crunch wraps and bring the big cheese and tostada. T-Bell cheese and crossover items were tested at the cheese location in Irvine. Steph is literally jumping up and down the line right now. In location in Irvine 2 years ago, both menu items include supersized cheese and cracker that's 16 times larger than the original. Big cheese and box will also be available. Taco Bell's Liz Matthews says the collaboration creates something truly larger than life. Wolferson. South London, K5 Files Log, cool temps moving in tonight, lows around 50 degrees. Cleared up tomorrow at a few degrees cooler. Highs above 60 at the beaches, low 70 in Metro Valley, Orange County, still above 100 further out the inland Empire, Palm Springs area, around 80 in the valleys, below 90 in the high desert. Most look the same for the weekend and a bit hotter into the weekend.
Right now in Irvine, 71, Landmark 75, Lorraine 76, Torrance 71 degrees. The K5 Financial Report sponsored by Rabbi Real Estate. That was down today, 330. Nasdaq was down 184. S&P was down 31.
Revive Real Estate just released a new tool that lets you see what your home would be worth after renovations. It's free to use. Just go to kfirevive.com. That's kfirevive.com.
It's a crash in commerce.
It's a special drive out there this afternoon. We've got Mike O'Brien with the latest KFI in the sky.
Well, here, K5 north out of Washington, they're blocking the two-left lanes. It was pretty earlier, so the little first bit, not much. It's still going to be bumper to bumper on Norwalk. It looks like it's hardly moving back to Rothschild. So it's getting worse.
On the
Back
video,
to Soy, the
Brad is
southbound
down
freeway
close
from
for
Burbank
final
all
approach.
the way down to the
And
navigation to
confirmation of
605.
readiness for
605
final approach, we
northbound,
will make
thanks for incident.
the
105
approach.
through
Please
here
confirm
for
for readiness.
60.
And
And the
remember,
southbound
once the
side
driver
of
is
605,
inside
that
the
looks
vehicle,
like just
and
about that
complete
same
and
spot
go back
around
on
60
the level
moving
to
forward. And that will remain heavy down through the Vine. Mike O'Brien, KFI in the sky.
Bishop Viejo on the 5 northbound Alicia Parkway. A crash has been cleared to the right shoulder. We're still seeing a really tough drive overall out of South Bishop Viejo from Avery Parkway. You've got that whole work zone to roll through. Southbound 5 loading up from just about 8 Parkway as you continue ahead towards El Toro Road. With Southern California's lead airport traffic reports, I'm Mitchell Martinez.
I'm completely the line already on illegal and limited under the surface. Status quo has been rolling. Frederick and Bill Brown introduce you to the world of stuff they don't want you to know. Officially introducing you to the industries where the place like fits. Somebody best for us, you know. Listen to stuff they don't want you to know on America's #1 podcast network, iHeart. Open your free iHeart app and search stuff they don't want you to know and start listening.
Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
Can I make my side softer?
Can I make my side firmer? Whenever I want. And will you sleep cooler? Sleep Number does that. Cools up to 8 times faster and lets you choose your ideal comfort on either side. 94% of Sleep Number smart sleepers report better sleep. GE Power ranks Sleep Number #1 in customer satisfaction with mattresses purchased in store. And now save 50% on the Sleep Number limited edition smart bed. For GE Power 2023 award information, visit gepower.com/awards. To find a store near you, visit sleepnumber.com. There are more identity threats than you realize. Even if you monitor your credits, will get little personal info needs to leak out.
Like your social security number or password.
And video confirmation, those two have been
LifeLock alerts you to threats you could miss. If your identity is stolen, a dedicated U.S.-based restoration specialist will work to fix it. No one can prevent all identity theft or monitor all transactions, but everyone can save up to 25% off their first year with promo code NEWS. Go to LifeLock.com.
approach
Something
of
big
Endeavour
is
to Dr.
here.
International Space Station has started.
Something so big it
That
couldn't
is
fit
expected
in
in
a
about
can.
4.5 minutes from now.
Introducing Bubbly Burst, a sparkling water beverage bursting with so much fruit flavor we had to put it in a bottle. With 6 sensational flavors and no added sugar, the newest member of the Bubbly family is worth smiling about. So look for the colorful Bubbly Burst bottles and add a burst of fruit flavor to your day. Oh, Bubbly Burst, coming to a fridge near you. Listen on the free iHeartRadio app for all your music, sports, talk, and podcasts. Free never sounded so good. KFI AM 640.
KFI AM at 640. It is the Conway Show. Ding dong. All right, any news going on, Belly? The news? No? Right before we get into the whole Trump thing, we do have a birthday here. And we always like to start with birthdays. I think the cheap shows do the birthday at the end. You know, where there's somebody's birthday at the end. They're like, oh, we're Kelly's up next on KFI AM 640. Oh, by the way, Lindsay, happy
You
birthday.
can see on your screen
That's a
it
cheap way
has
to do it.
fruit
So
wrappers,
Lindsay is with us. It's her
pictures,
birthday. She's turning 25. She can officially rent a car.
ports,
And
a donkey.
is it Arabian? Is that your last name? Yes, my last name is Arabian.
There
Oh,
were 15
okay.
meters
And,
unclosing, making a
is
sway
that,
and methodical approach
what is that?
to a docking port.
What's the heritage?
It's Armenian. My dad is actually a white guy, so
Armenian or what? When your mom's Armenian?
So
when they got married, they pulled a last name from my mom's side that had died out, and they kind of like brought it back. But so they were trying to go for.
Oh, it starts too long, man. Sorry. All right, Lindsay, happy birthday. That's great. 25 years old. And how long you been with us?
Copy
It
10
started
meters.
in March.
Okay. All right, now, see, you're just sort of made under the wire. Anybody who's new,
That call out
like, I think we have asked their
10 meters
birthday.
away.
Like, for instance, let's say you started dating somebody on February 11th. Would you buy them a big, huge celebration bouquet on February 14th on Valentine's Day? No. Right? If you see, it would seem overbearing.
I would.
Overbearing. So, we're gonna push, I'm sorry, you're what? Wait, what did you say?
Because I'm a lesbian.
So, Lindsay talking?
No, that's me.
Oh, Robin. Okay, I couldn't see you there.
Followed by a
Wow,
hard
I got
question that hard
all right,
question
anyway,
is,
Lindsay, happy birthday.
this is
I
what
hope you enjoy many more, and say hi to the very convoluted family.
Yeah, that's a happy birthday to me.
What's your birthday,
So
Rob?
if you grab a 6
Oh,
meters
what, February
away,
what?
19.
Oh, okay, 5 days after
fly one
Valentine's Day.
thing and
Oh,
put
that sucks.
63 seconds
At least it's not Valentine's Day.
Girls gotta double up on you. Or she's got a lace up on someone on February 14th, then hit you again on the 19th.
Yeah, sometimes I hate when people do it at the same time.
Yeah, what a busy month for you. How dare you board it then 5 days after Valentine's Day. All right, let's get into the Donald Trump, that decision handed down a little bit after 2 o'clock. I think that's when it came down, right? A little bit after 2 p.m. And a lot of people with a lot of different reaction of what's going on. And it seems like a sad day in the country. But maybe, I don't know, maybe I just was listening to sad radio or sad TV. But you know what I noticed? I looked around. I want to see CNN and MSNBC. And they were very, very subdued on CNN and MSNBC. They were gloating or, clapping. You didn't hear yelling going on in the background. Even though this was ultimately the goal, to try to get Trump convicted of some of these things. And they were successful at it. But they didn't seem to enjoy it. And I thought that was odd. I was looking for like a party on CNN or a party on MSNBC. And it just wasn't happening. I flipped around, I couldn't find any happiness. Fox was pissed off, CNN wasn't happy, MSNBC wasn't happy. I hope the parade in West Hollywood will be happy. Hope that's not going to be down. That's this week, right, Robin?
Of course.
Okay, you go to that?
Cell capture confirmed.
No, I go to the parade because it's free.
Okay.
Not the rest. The rest is like $200.
Oh, it is? It costs money to get in the pride?
That call out, that's
Yeah, I remember when it was like $40 maybe.
Really?
Yeah, now it's $100 starting, and then like VIP is like